Good morning. Hi, that was nice. The March 5th, 2025 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. The board continues to meet in a hybrid format. For those here in person, please take a moment to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. For those attending virtually, if you desire an opportunity to speak, we ask that you please keep yourself on mute until the chair recognizes you. When you're called upon, please announce your name and organization and speak loudly and clearly as you present. At this time, I would ask our clerk, Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions for today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. This morning, we have one correction to note on the agenda for SB 2510559. This is for the Police Department. It's a travel request, and in the action requested, we are deleting the end date 2/28/2025 and inserting a new end date 3/28/2025. We have no walk-ons to note this morning, and we have no deferrals to note this morning. We have the following withdrawals from the agenda. SB 2510328 for the Bureau of Procurement. This is an unauthorized procurement with J.C. Ehrlich for $51,507.99. This has been withdrawn at the request of the agency. SB 2510482, Department of General Services, final release of retainage for GS 21818 Southwest Police Station roof replacement with Bensky Construction Company, Inc. for $68,250.00. This item is withdrawn at the request of the agency. SB 2510182, Department of Transportation grant agreement for $3,606,711.00. This item has been withdrawn at the request of the agency. SB 2510525, City Council travel and travel reimbursement for Councilman James Torrance for $4,318.94. This item has been withdrawn at the request of the agency. And SB 2510438 for Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Amendment 1 to Subgrant Agreement with Center for Urban Families, Inc. This is an ARPA grant. This has been withdrawn at the request of the agency. We have no protests or statements received this morning. We have the following items that are appearing on the non-routine agenda. SB 2414769 for the Department of Audits. This is a biennial performance follow-up audit of the Department of Planning for fiscal years ending June 30, 2023 and June 30, 2022. SB 2510243 for the Department of Audits biennial performance audit follow-up of the Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Business Advocacy and Development for fiscal years 2023 and 2022. SB 2414771, Department of Audits biennial performance follow-up audit of the Baltimore City Recreation and Parks for the fiscal years ending June 30, 2023 and June 30, 2022. SB 2510530, Department of Finance Professional Services Agreement with PFM Group Consulting, LLC for $1,300,000. SB 2510358 for the Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release for Harley et al. Versus Mayor and City Council of Baltimore for $204,400.00. SB 2510533 for Mayor's Office of Employment Development Professional Services Agreement, the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners for $324,769.50. SB 2415094 for the Bureau of Procurement and unauthorized procurement with Versaterm Public Safety US Inc. for $50,836.35. SB 2415005, Bureau of Procurement unauthorized purchase event management software for $11,958.74. And SB 2510431, Bureau of Procurement. This is an award, a sole source with IMAX Incorporated for maintenance and repair service contract for SCADA, SCADA system at water facilities for $750,000. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott is abstaining on the following items. SB 2414958, Health Department Agreement, the Johns Hopkins University. SB 2413919, Health Department Agreement, the Johns Hopkins University. SB 2414784, Health Department Agreement, the Johns Hopkins University. SB 2415081, Health Department Agreement, the Johns Hopkins University. And SB 241 14742, Health Department Agreement with the Johns Hopkins University. The Honorable President Zeke Cohen has no abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and travel reimbursements. City Solicitor Ebony Thompson has no abstentions to note this morning. And Director of Public Works Khalil Zaid has no abstentions to note this morning. There are no votes on the non-routine from any members this morning. And Mr. President, that concludes our opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve and adopt the opening statement as read by the clerk.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. The opening statement has been adopted. I now direct the board.
That's why I was cutting it off.
I don't know. It sounded relaxing. Though. You want to just have that playing in the background.
That'd be good.
That would be nice.
I now direct the board members' attention to the memorandum from my office dated February 19th, 2025, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes that have been noted by the clerk. I will entertain a motion to approve all items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving the items on the routine agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda items have been approved. Seeing no further questions, we will now move to the non-routine agenda. The first item on the non-routine agenda is SB 2414769, Department of Audits. This request is to note the biennial performance follow-up audit of the Department of Planning for the fiscal years ending on June 30th, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. On behalf of audits, we have not Mr. Pash, but a new gentleman. Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller. My name is Josh Pash. I'm the city auditor, and I'm here to present we're doing planning first, right? Okay.
Yes.
The biannual follow-up performance audit of Department of Planning. We have a presentation. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so today I will go over our audit objective and scope, the results that we have, and answer any questions. Next slide. Our audit objectives and scope was to follow up on the implementation status of managed correction plans for the audit report issued in December 20th, 2022. The prior audit objective was to evaluate the Planning Commission's and Department of Planning's capital budgeting process to determine how the City of Baltimore prioritizes capital projects and whether funds are distributed equitably. Next slide, please. Okay, so the results of our audit. We contacted Department of Planning and Office of Equity and Civil Rights. All findings and recommendations from the prior audit were not implemented due to the following reasons. There was a change in OECR leadership and one of their key staff members. The OECR submitted a funding request to the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs, and that funding request was for a request for information to identify a consultant or an organization to work with the Office of Equity and Civil Rights on a comprehensive equity assessment and equity plan for the city. Department of Planning's action plans for the first two findings are contingent upon the OECR's citywide implementation plan. And then number 4, the Department of Planning has not implemented its action plans for finding 3 due to competing priorities. Now, what were the prior findings? First one, the criteria used to evaluate capital improvement projects based on equity requires improvement. For this, we recommended that the Planning Commission and Director of Planning revise the equity evaluation criteria and scoring guide to weigh equity outcomes in scoring each criteria and facilitate continuity throughout the city. When we did our testing, we found that the equity assessment and scoring was not consistent across all projects. Finding 2, the process to measure and report the distribution of capital projects based on equity is incomplete. We recommended that the Planning Commission and Director of Department of Planning establish a process to require agencies to submit an equity analysis for all capital projects that are excluded from the community statistical areas, that they're excluded through the ordinance of estimates, and indicate the actual capital funding. So we found that a significant portion of the capital improvement plan is about 40% is not reported based on equity and actual use because they are excluded. And we also noted that transfers, once the budget and plan is implemented, are also not captured and reported how that actual use was used and the equity distribution. The second bullet for recommendation is to capture and report the results, including transfers submitted by the agencies, which is basically once the projects have been expended to reevaluate and see what that distribution was. And then to work with the Department of Finance to determine if CSA location information can be incorporated into the financial system to assist reporting or another system. In the interim, a monitoring process should be established to validate whether capital projects are performed within the CSA, reported for budget and equity purposes, so not only including the front end, what the plan is for the equity assessment, but once it's already been implemented, how the end results came about. Next slide, please. Okay, number 3, there's an opportunity to strengthen the city resident engagement in capital budgeting process. We recommended that the PC and Director of DOP develop a formal citywide policy and procedures that engage citizens across the city in the beginning of the capital budget process at the agency level. We noted that there wasn't consistency across agencies of how they engaged the community. And then to include documenting and evaluation of those recommendations for the citizens based on equity, which is documenting how those community engagements actually resulted, how it came out, and then how they were integrated into the plan. And then this is applicable to both agencies, which have their own community engagement, and the Department of Planning, who has their community engagement. Number 4, a citywide equity plan to focus limited resources on underserved communities and assess outcomes does not exist, and this is basically the citywide plan, and we recommended that the director of the OECR develop the citywide plan that targets underserved communities and will close those related gaps, which is the goal of the program. I would like to thank the agency staff and our audit team for helping us to complete this audit, and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. I will ask for questions from the board. Before I do that, I do want to recognize former colleague, Councilman Chris Burnett, who joins us from the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. Thank you for being here and for your great service. Questions from the board? Okay. Seeing no further questions, I invite the Department of Planning to come up, or the Office of Equity and Civil Rights to come up for any response they'd like to provide. I see Director Ryer.
Mr. President, Mayor, Controller, and members of the board, thank you for having the Department of Planning and the Office of Equity and Civil Rights here today. I'll be relatively brief. Last time we appeared before you, we were directed to work together to improve our analysis. Thank you to the Controller for that suggestion. As we have discovered, it is not an exaggeration to say that an equity analysis of the capital budget, as well as the operations of the entire city, is no small task. Several of the findings of the previous audit were dependent on the completion of a first ever citywide equity action plan. You may remember the Controller suggesting that we work together on this. The Office of Equity and Civil Rights will report on the progress of that goal. But let me move now to the final 2 recommendations, the opportunity to strengthen resident engagement. As you may know, the team has been working frantically to correct the myriad errors and missing data discovered in the transition from to Workday in the capital budget. This monumental task, undertaken by the Department of Planning with significant assistance from the Department of Finance, has been ongoing for over a year and won't be complete until this summer. As we say, there can be no equity without accurate data. The incomplete and missing data does not portray an accurate picture of the city's capital budget, and it would be deceptive to attempt to engage the public with that. As has been discussed in several council hearings, we are well past the halfway mark, but still have a way to go. We don't expect this data cleanup to be complete until the summer of this year. Finally, in the last 2 years, the Department of Planning, with strong support from the administration, has made significant changes to the capital budgeting process. Furthermore, since August of '24, Department of Planning has pursued efforts to refine our distribution analysis with a partnership with the Urban Institute and their spatial equity tool. During the CIP process for FY25, we conducted a case study using this new methodology to better understand its functionality and fit for the broader CIP work. Finally, although our Assistant Director for Equity and Engagement is not here today, the Department of Planning has made 2 hires in 2024 to help strengthen the agency's community outreach and engagement. So for the first time, the Department of Planning has both a communications position and an equity position. So we think once this data cleanup is complete, we will be able to readdress the findings of the audit. Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Ryer, thank you. Questions from the board? I see Comptroller Henry.
Well, not a question as much as a comment or a response. I do very clearly remember encouraging the Planning Department 2 years ago not to duplicate the efforts that the Office of Equity and Civil Rights said that they were doing, and it seemed like it would be foolish for the city to have both the Planning Department and the Office of Equity and Civil Rights spend money hiring people to help do this assessment and get baseline data that we need so that our agencies can be following our now 5-plus-year-old equity law and run their operations through an equity frame, capital spending as well as daily operations. I have to admit, it never occurred to me 2 years ago that 2 years later, the Office of Equity and Civil Rights still wouldn't have completed that. And that puts everybody in an odd position. But it has also given us more time, I think, to reflect on what properly doing this will mean. And if I can take us all back in time 2 years and remind people that one of the things that the Department of Audits found 2 years ago, interviewing members of other agencies in their participation, was that there was a widespread misunderstanding of how the equity law was supposed to be applied. And a number of agencies, I would say, apparently we were successful 25 years ago in getting city agency buy-in for 311. And we now have a culture where all the agencies understand that the complaints and comments and concerns that come in through 311 are important feedback from our residents, and many, if not all agencies, drive a lot of their operations based on the 311 data. The way the equity law is currently written, though, we are supposed to put the equity frame above all other input, which means that technically the equity law is in conflict with our current culture of being customer driven. And I say, as somebody who was on the city council voting for the equity law, that part was not a big part of the public discussion. And so I think that while we are waiting on the Office of Equity and Civil Rights to give us that baseline that we need so that we can have the data to do the equity frame that the law calls for, it wouldn't be a bad idea for the city council to revisit the law itself and look at whether or not there's an opportunity to find some kind of tweak so that 311 and equity can coexist, rather than one being clearly predominant over the other, which I believe is how the current law is designed.
Mayor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Thank you, Mr. President. I of course, remember it right well. I didn't have to sell you on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. But I think, Mr. Comptroller, I think that while I understand what you're saying, I think that we also have to take in other considerations, and something I thought about when we were doing the bill. Because we know when it comes to 311, it's who has access, who has the time to put in 311s. And when you look at the neighborhoods, for example, not just because they're here, that Rec and Parks has now been investing in over now our first term and the first few months of this second term. Those aren't neighborhoods that you're going to get a bunch of 311 requests in to improve parks or to improve rec centers, right? Because those people in those disinvested neighborhoods, quite frankly, they're at work. They don't have time to put in those requests. And what we have to be mindful of is that if we operate in that vein, then it will go into being the squeaky wheel, and the people who have the time to sit there and put in the 311s, who in many cases are not going to be the people who would benefit from us operating through a true sense of equity. So we just have to have that balance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Administrator Leach, you want to share some comments?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Faith Leach, City Administrator. So, Mr. Comptroller, really appreciate your points about 311. And I think it's something that we've actually been very intentional and thoughtful about, of how we are driving our service delivery, but also our investments. And it's not just based off of what is happening in 311. But we've also made some reforms with how we leverage 311. We actually have BPD in many of our agencies as they are going out and about doing their work in communities, especially those communities that typically don't see a lot of 311s. We are actually requiring officers in our target enforcement zones to go through and enter as many 311s as possible. And then what we do on the back end is during police stat or other convenings, we're going through looking at those 311s and seeing if they're closed. So I just wanted to add a little bit more color about how it is not just the resident that is leveraging 311. We've actually activated the workforce as they are out to put in 311 requests. And then in addition, in the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, we'll go into a little bit more of of their work and the equity work. But to the mayor's point about Rec and Parks and some of many of our city agencies, that they've actually taken a posture that we believe to be equity focused, right? We've done maps of where our investments are, and the majority of the investments, or a significant number of investments that we've done, have been in those historically underinvested in communities. One of the ARPA was mentioned earlier. Yes, of course.
When you said we've done maps of where when you said we've done maps of where our investments are, do you mean you have done maps of current/recent investments?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because if you had maps of historically where the city's investments were, that would be the baseline analysis that we don't appear to have yet.
Yeah.
So when you say you have maps of where your investments have been recently, and I mean this with respect,
Of course.
it's your opinion that they are in places that have been historically disinvested based on anecdotal conversation, because if it was based on a baseline study and data, it would be what we've been waiting for from the Office of Equity and Civil Rights
Of course.
for 4 years.
Yes, so I received that. I think that some of the agencies have actually gone through, and especially when it comes to our rec and parks, we've talked about the place-based equity work that we did with Kaboom and the current consultant that they're working with on equitable investments when it comes to recreation. We also do, though, have that baseline code map. We know where the city buildings are that we own, and we know when the last time we invested in particular areas of our city. So I do believe, and we should be undertaking that citywide assessment. It's not hard to determine where the parts of our city that are underinvested in. There's a lot of data that tells us where there's the most significant underinvestment in the city of Baltimore. But I do take your point about the need for that overall official map, if you will, or undertaking that the Office of Equity and Civil Rights will be leading.
I mean, but
Comptroller.
following up on your point, if we have all that data and it's not hard, why haven't we done it in 4 years?
Yes. Oh, did you?
Madam Administrator, here, let me do Mr. Mayor, and then.
Of course.
I think, Mr. Comptroller, I understand what you're saying, but I guess I'll say it in a different way than the city administrator. We all know, if you go, for example, we're getting ready to break ground, I know you'll be there, on a brand-new rec center in Brooklyn, in Curtis Bay. Anyone that's been to Brooklyn and Curtis Bay over the last 40 years know the city hasn't spent any money in Brooklyn and Curtis Bay. Now, do they have, ready, available documentation that was kept not in hand scribe and all the things that we all know? This work that now our former colleague is going to be doing at Civil Rights, no. In many cases, it's a lot harder than we would want it to be, but we still know, right? Anyone knows that if you look at, for example, when we were in Chum, right, celebrating the investments there, or over on Emerson Avenue and Emerson Village, so we all know that this stuff never happened there. You know, probably better than anybody, that like how it used to be. If it touched the water, then yes, it got money. If it didn't touch the water, then no, it didn't get money. But we know that this is a process, and it's taken a lot longer than even I've wanted it to take. A lot of anger from me to the team about that. But I also know that we don't have to wait to make the investments, and the team has been doing a great job of making those investments now. But I didn't have to ask Rec and Parks if they had invested in Towanda Rec Center or Towanda Pool, because it looked the same as it did when I walked in there when I was 4 years old, right, when I came into office. I think that we also have to balance it out with the actual information that we can get from historical things from the agencies, also with the stuff that all of us know from living here all these years, but all of our years in city government. I think the agencies have done a good job of that. But now I know, and I don't want to step on their thunder, that Civil Rights has a plan of action to try to ramp that up as we move forward.
Let me, I first want to just appreciate the dialogue. I think in this moment where, according to a different administration, equity has become a curse word, it is important to acknowledge that leaders here in Baltimore still deeply value this work and see it as central to where our city is headed. I appreciate also the comptroller's point about some of the inherent tension between efficiency, equity, how we prioritize investment, capital projects. I would say there's been some confusion, at least within the council, and would love to hear from Director Ryer. When we think about capital planning and equity and sort of where investment is going, could you just articulate for us, for the board, what that looks like what the framework that you use as you think about our very limited supply of capital dollars that we have in the city of Baltimore, and unfortunately knowing our state's financial position and knowing the challenges emanating from DC, we know it is going to be a very finite amount of dollars that we have to invest. Could you articulate sort of your schema or your approach as we think about equity to how capital investments work?
So I'll start prior to the director.
Madam
and then-
Administrator, you're welcome
Oh,
to
thank you. Thank you so much.
frame it up for us.
Of course, and then I'll turn it over to the director. As it relates to the capital budget, we first start with life safety. So we think about the number of challenges that we've had with HVAC systems in city buildings and libraries and roof replacement needs at fire stations, right? Because our infrastructure is so old, a lot of where we first look to invest is making sure that our employees are safe, our residents are safe, and that we can address those immediate life safety needs. And then I'll turn it over to the director to talk a little bit more about the work that is done by each of the agencies that contributes to how they show up in the capital budget.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Administrator. I want to second that there are other considerations, for example, life safety or legal requirements that we look at when we do the capital budget. But we have, to use a very simple example, we have been able to map a substantial amount of the capital budget. The challenge is in particularly in the Department of Public Works, system-wide improvements, right? That when you make an improvement to a water pipe or a sewer pipe, it doesn't necessarily benefit the neighborhood that pipe is replaced in. In fact, it can be a detriment to that. And the construction and the noise and the time and the inconvenience can be a detriment. I'll give the simplest example I can. In the first audit, when we were we have published, I should say, I think we're up to 5 reports on the capital budget now. But early on, there was a notable uptick in the capital budget within the Reservoir Hill and Druid Hill Park area, and it was because of the tank project in Druid Park Lake. It looked like there was a huge investment in that neighborhood on paper, but I think most residents would tell you that was a negative experience, at least during the construction period. So we're trying to refine it. We're working with the department to geocode certain types of things that we haven't coded before. I think we're up to around 65% that we're confident in, that we are saying something impactful with our analysis, and we will work towards increasing that to 70 or 75%. I'm not sure we'll ever get to a perfect solution, but I'm just using that as one example of how the analysis of the capital budget doesn't always reflect what you want it to reflect.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to invite the Office of, thank you, Director Ryer. I'm going to invite the Office of Equity and Civil Rights to present as well. Thank you for joining us. And if you could state your name and what you do.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Lisa Kelly. I'm the Interim Chief Equity Officer. I'm also the Interim Director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. I've been in the role since December 6th. I'm also here joined by Chief Burnett, Chief of Equity, as well as Chief Viola Willems. So I would like to speak to the work that has been done so far. We have hired a division chief and a data analyst in the equity office. We have also reviewed several city agency equity reports from 2021, 2022, and 2023. And then we also worked with the Department of Planning to draft a request for proposal to secure a firm to complete the equity assessment and plan. And so I do have good news today. The city has identified some funding for the equity assessment, and we have been approved to begin soliciting detailed proposals for completion of the comprehensive equity assessment and plan. And I can take any questions that you have so far.
Thank you. Questions from the board? I see Comptroller Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what is your time frame in terms of if the funding's been identified and you're are you planning the solicitation for a consultant, or have you already identified?
So we have, so we've drafted the request for proposal.
Okay.
And so we plan to finalize that request for proposal within the next 2 weeks, and then we will begin the,
And they'll put that out in the field, give it, how long, is this through procurement, or are you doing it
Yes,
yourself?
I
Okay,
anticipate,
through
yes.
procurement. So how long is procurement telling you to expect for when you would actually have a finalist settled and identified and ready to start work?
so I'm not sure about that answer,
Okay.
but I can follow up with the board.
And in the RFP, or in the scope of the work, how long do you expect the actual work of the consultant to take to deliver you a baseline assessment?
That's also something that I can't answer today, but I would follow up with the board.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Scott?
Thank you, ma'am. But in that time while you guys are working with Adam and the fine folks at procurement, can you tell us about the work that you guys will be doing in the interim around the issue and stuff that you can do now yourselves?
Sure. Okay, so what we have been doing is we finished review of completion of the agency equity reports. So these are reports that the city agencies have submitted to the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, and that will provide the foundation of the city's comprehensive assessment and overall plan of equity. We have also engaged and trained city agencies. So our equity division has provided several trainings to city agencies. We also have, so in that time frame as well, we have staffed up the equity office. So as of the last update, we had a equity trainer, but now we have an equity trainer, a division chief, and a data research analyst, as well as a legislative policy analyst. And so our equity trainer partners with OECR Enforcement and Compliance Division, so that's staff from our other divisions, to provide equity training along with compliance training to city agencies. And we're now working on providing training to legislative analysts so they're able to review legislation with an equity lens. And we're also we continue to encourage agencies to submit these equity assessments because, as we noted, the equity coordinators are uniquely positioned to know the equity opportunities and challenges in their department. So we need their voices to contribute to the overall equity plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to have Chief Jasiah Smith come up from Rec and Parks. It's all kind of connected at this point. Appreciate you, Madam Director.
We're still talking about we're still on the first.
No, I'm saying.
Oh, you're not moving on to there. Yeah, no, he's just bringing her up to talk about the last.
You got a whole separate thing. All right.
Yes, I do, but
Let me get back to the regular scheduled meeting.
Okay.
I'm going to blame the mayor for throwing me off on that one. This was his idea. My apologies, Madam Director.
Oh, I see what next. Okay.
Gotcha. All right. Further questions on the previous item? Madam City Administrator, close us out.
So sorry. I just wanted to, on the capital piece of this, because I think we were just focused on capital, I also wanted to remind us of the limited capital budget that we have. And when you think about what's actually included in the capital investment, a significant portion of the capital, of our capital investment is in DOT and DPW. Much of the work is ordained by or managed by consent decrees, and so we're required to do those things. On DGS, what you're seeing is life safety. The investments that we've been able to make in Rec and Parks were only realized in part because of ARPA dollars. So this is the first time, I would say, in a significant number of years that we've been able to make investments in recreation and parks. We weren't able to actually cobble together dollars to complete projects in a single fiscal year. We were budgeting over multiple fiscal years to try to build one rec center. And so through ARPA, we were able to really kind of power that work up. So I do want to just remind us of kind of the limited availability that we currently have within our CIP. So that's all I wanted to offer.
Seeing no further questions, this item is noted by the board. The first item on the non-routine agenda is SB 25-10243, Department of Audits. This request is to note the biennial performance follow-up audit of the Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Business Advocates and Development's fiscal years 23 and 22. On behalf of audits, we have Mr. Pash back in the building. Mr. Pash, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable members. My name is Josh Pash. I'm the city auditor, and I'm here to present the biennial performance audit follow-up for the Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Business Advocacy and Development.
Mike's not on.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable members. My name is Josh Pash. I'm city auditor, and I'm here to present the biennial performance audit follow-up for the Mayor's Office of Small Business and Minority Advocacy Development. I will go over our audit objective and scope, the methodology we used, the summary of implementation status, prior findings and recommendations, and some additional recommendations that we came up with through this follow-up audit. Next slide. Audit objective and scope. Our current audit objective was to follow up on the prior findings and recommendations, including the previous audit dated October 2022. We looked at fiscal years June 30, 2023, and ending June 30, 2022. The prior audit objective that we're following up on was to evaluate the Department of Law's monitoring of compliance with goals of minority business enterprise and women business enterprise. I do want to note that the Small and Minority Business Advocacy and Development SMBAD was created in July of 2023 to consolidate the functions of the former Mayor's Office of Minority and Women Business Development and the Minority and Women Business Opportunity Office. Methodology. So we conducted meetings and walkthroughs regarding the new B2G system and with SMBAD leadership. We reviewed the active contracts with prime payments report from the B2G system to assess whether MBE, WBE goals and attainments are consistently recorded and tracked in the B2G system. And that would be to report and to collect information on MBE and WBE compliance. We reviewed training rosters, materials, and short tutorial videos in the B2G system. We reviewed the fiscal year 23 annual report submitted by 9 agencies and reviewed the Baltimore City Mayor's Office of Small Business Minority Advocacy and Development annual report for 23, and we also looked at the annual report for fiscal year 22. Next slide. So implementation status. 1 recommendation was implemented, 3 were partially implemented, and 1 was not implemented, and I will go through those. Next slide. So our first finding, basically to summarize, is that MBU would gather information needed to calculate compliance when a BOE action was requested. So if a contract was coming to the BOE for extension, modification, et cetera, then the BOE would ask for the compliance with their previous. And what we found was they had to calculate that as it was requested. Our recommendation was to establish a process to track the status of contracts and the achievement of those goals, and to evaluate the effectiveness of that program towards meeting those goals on a proactive basis, and to enforce contracting agencies to maintain documentation and submit that information to MBU on a regular basis. And the manager's response was that they had implemented a B2G contracting compliance system, which was digitizing the entire process. And this system is working with the prime contractors, the subcontractors, and the agencies to collect that information. We were informed at SMBAD that they're still in the change management process to ensure that all the active contracts and those prior payments are entered into the system. So the system is currently live, and they are still working out the kinks. So due to where SMBAD is in the process with some of those agencies, they don't have the data to display trends within those agencies or the city as a whole regarding those payments. We mark this as partially implemented because the B2G system has been implemented, but they are still finalizing and collecting data to use it. Next slide. Okay. The next recommendation was regarding AMBU informing us that it's the agency's responsibility to basically monitor their contracts and the compliance with those contracts. However, the agencies who are required to submit those to AMBU, they were not being enforced to submit those contracts. So AMBU informed us, SMBAD informed us that they have conducted agency training in fiscal years 22 through 24 with those agencies to make sure that they're aware of the process and when they need to submit those goal sheets or any waivers and the timetable for review and also how to utilize the B2G system for the contract compliance. We had marked this recommendation as implemented because that training has occurred and is still occurring. The next, in addition to that, going along those lines, the annual agency reports have been requested for both fiscal year 22 and 23. These reports have varying degrees of details regarding the effort and effectiveness. We identified this recommendation and management action plan as partially implemented. We looked at 9 agencies. Those are the ones that submitted their annual fiscal year 23 reports. And we noted that there is inconsistent reporting structure among those 9 agencies. 4 agencies did not include MBE and WE goals compliance, and only 5 agencies had data pertaining to the monitoring of those goals. And of those 5, 2 agencies reported an aggregate total of their agency-wide MBE goal compliance, and 3 agencies had reported MBE and WE goal compliance by individual contracts. So there's different levels of detail that they included, not consistent across those. If you look at the note on the left, the 4 agencies are the Police Department, Transportation, Planning, and Baltimore City Parking Authority, and the 5 agencies that had the MBE-WE data were the Health Department, BSED, Park and Recs, DGS, and Department of Public Works. Next slide. With the same recommendation, the management action plan that they identified, what those in reports have been presented to the BOE for, the SMBAD reports have been submitted to the BOE for fiscal years 22 and 23, and they plan on doing fiscal year 24 prior to the end of calendar year 24. And we had marked that action plan as partially implemented. Those reports do not include information regarding MBE and WE goal compliance in an aggregate total for the city or nor aggregate total for those agencies. And then the last recommendation was to put together standard operating procedures to make consistency across this, and they have not implemented that or completed those, and their plan is to have those done or to work on those through fiscal year 2025, and that is the recommendation action plan that was marked as not implemented. So next slide. So during our follow-up, we, looking at the process, the move to the P2G system, we came up with some additional recommendations to the director of SMBAD. One is to continue implementing the B2G system to track and monitor those compliance, getting in the previous contracts and evaluating how the system is working and how to do reporting. And then to obtain city leadership expectations. So basically, the point here is to determine what the stakeholders need to know to make their assessment. We don't necessarily want to recommend what SMBAD should be reporting their annual reports. That really is to address the stakeholders, the leadership, the BOE, the city council. So to have that conversation to pinpoint and to target what the SMBAD should be reporting. And then the last one is to set baseline expectations of which be included in annual WBE and MBE compliance reports. That goes back to the inconsistency of agencies reporting to SMBAD and to basically set a minimum level of what should be included in those annual reports. I'd like to thank the SMBAD staff and our audit team for making this audit successful, and I will answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Pash. Questions from the board? Okay. Seeing no further questions,
Are you going to bring up Chief
Yeah.
Lundy? Okay.
Yeah. I invite the Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Business Advocacy and Development to come up for any response they would like to provide. Mr. Lundy, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, honorable members of the board. Let me just try to share my content with you.
For the record, please state your name and
Christopher
title.
Lundy, Director of the Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Advocacy and Development. I believe I'm there. Again, this is the audit for FY 22 and 23. Continue implementation of the B2G system. This is a system that we've been working on for a while. It's a web-based system that works to do the diversity compliance for minority and women's business program. This has fully digitized our process that allows us to do much-needed data analysis. We're able to do a lot of efficiency within the system. And this really now has been a critical aspect of the system. So what we currently do is we host the active certification directory of minority and women-owned businesses. We track and process the applications for minority and women-owned businesses for certification or recertification, including their expansion of any additional services that they may offer. We also note our investigative process in that system, and we're also using that for messaging and outreach to the business community as well. So this is not a substitute for Workday. This is an addition. Workday, of course, is our system of record. All of our data flows directly from Workday. That's how we get this payment information, and it really has allowed us to get a lot of much-needed information. Additionally, in terms of the continuation of this process, we're in the process of finishing out review of some of the contracts that are within the system so that we can do full contract compliance for all active contracts within the city. We're optimistic that we're going to be completely through with that review of the contracts this month. One of the things that has delayed us is due to some of the limitations in Workday regarding minority and women-owned businesses. It has caused some delays. So one of the things we don't have in Workday currently are the applicable MWBE goals for the contract. I am excited to say we have been working with the Workday team, and we are going to be adding the goals for each contract into the system in Workday. So those will then allow us to flow over and lock in and review the contracts even swifter as we move forward. Additionally, we're going to be working on goal setting. That's going to be the last component that we're going to be working with. And the beautiful thing with goal setting in the system is we're going to be able to use all of our active data. So we're going to be able to look at the active availability of certified minority and women-owned businesses. We're also going to be able to utilize our prior disparity study data and actually see who is actively available to work with the city. We are currently doing the post-award compliance reviews in B2G for the contracts that are populated in the system. There are a few older contracts that are still getting action that we do have to do manually outside the system, but we are trying to fully move to that more efficient electronic service. And this replaces the old email call system where we would get a compliance review request from the agency, and we would have to contact every single prime to get their payment information of who they paid as far as MWBEs, and then contact each of the MWBE subs for that information. So it is much more efficient process, and this also brings greater transparency for you all members of the board, all of our agency leadership, and also the members of the public that are working on these contracts. So at a moment's notice, you can log into the system, see what the prime is alleging has been paid to you if you're a sub on the contract, confirm those payments, which we'll detail as we go through the presentation. Anybody that is interested in the system or potentially working on city contracts, this is at baltimorecity.diversitycompliance.com. If you're going to be working on city contracts, it's imperative that you get registered in that system. So we ask people to try to do that proactively. So if you do get awarded a contract, you're already in the system so that you're ready to do so. And this really makes it also from a project management standpoint. There's no longer this uncertainty of where you are in the contract. Oftentimes, I know we've had briefings with Council President, with the Comptroller, about where somebody is on a contract, how we feel about their progress. We'll now be able to see that precise spend. The data is coming over monthly, so we're kind of a month behind in terms of the payments, but you will be able to see that accurate payment data to understand how much your prime has paid to your subs, how they're utilizing them throughout the life of the contract. This is our compliance reporting process. This is really the B2G ecosystem in terms of how folks get information. So it's a monthly process where you get a verification if you're actively working on a contract. Folks get notified by email that they have, that Workday is saying that they received payments from the city. The prime master entered their data. The subcontractor then gets notified about the amount that the prime put into the system. They verify that that's correct or list whatever amount they did pay. If there's any inaccuracies, we'll be notified with my team and also with the agency to resolve any of those. And then this is an ongoing process. If you have a $0 month where you didn't get paid any money, you won't be asked to verify that you didn't get paid. But when we do see that those payments were made, you're going to have to go through that process. And again, as the auditor remarked, this is training that we've been working on for FY23 and 24 to get the agencies and the public ready for this. We have been working with folks to make sure they're fully aware. One of the beautiful things about B2G is it does have actually a on-demand training. So all of the training materials to work and function in the system are always live on the website. So anyone at any time of the day can go in and watch those videos. It's the same video that you would get in the live classes. They also have live classes that happen about every 2 weeks on the key subjects about the contract review, how to use the directory, how to do the audit process. So you can do that on your own time, or you can schedule with a live individual if you want to have that question and answer back and forth with them about how to use the system. And that's in addition to my team. We've added a training officer who's with us that really has put together a lot of robust materials to try to make sure folks are aware of the process and how to guide them through it. We do have, so this is just some examples of the compliance training, how to get to those videos. I won't bog us down, but we do have like how-tos that are on the website that kind of show you where to go in, how to find your account on there if you're new to the system. If you've worked previously in any B2G in the country, your business is in the system, so you just have to do a lookup. But they have these training videos in the video library that are there at all times. You can also do any of that system training that's there on that homepage. If you just go down to training, it's always there. Oh, and I do want to go back and note, on that homepage, you can see in the bottom a little picture. We have about the system, upcoming events, outreach. Upcoming events and outreach, and we have outreach campaigns about informational things, upcoming speaker series we have at the Resource Center. All those things are going to be conveniently located right there. Outreach is really a digital bulletin board for the community, so when you go on, if you're in the system, you can go there and see if there's any messages that we'd like you to know that may assist you as you go through that process. And then the classes, all you have to do is go in and RSVP. It'll show you how many seats are available for those digital classes. And again, they happen repeatedly. When we talk about robust reporting capabilities, so one of the challenges we've had is we haven't had a B2G. We haven't had the data to show citywide spending, MWBE spending, spend by particular industry, spend by agency, types of contracts. We will now be able to do all of those things within B2G as we move forward. It's going to be able to, and these are all types of reports that we have here in terms of the diverse spend, the breakdown of the certified MWBEs. Particularly, we can look at contracts with goals, but no payments to subs. So if those are starting to be contracts that have been in existence for a period of time and we have concerns, we can go in and kind of spot target those agencies, those prime contractors, and make sure there's not any utilization challenges that are taking place. We also are going to have that prompt payment analysis with the prime versus subcontractor payments to see some of that timeliness. And one of my favorite things of the system is we're going to have a departmental dashboard. This is something that as we get all the contracts locked in, we're going to be sharing with the agencies on a regular basis. This is really your overview of everything in the system. So it'll show your active contracts, what the value of those contracts are, how much you've paid the folks, what your MWBE utilization is, what the goals are. So it'll really kind of give that top-down view of how you're doing on all of your contracts from an MWBE standpoint. So when we get to annual reporting, there'll be no like, well, I thought we were doing better along the way, and it seemed like we had made some strides, but this is a lower number than we thought. You will see real-life numbers as you go through to be able to make those adjustments. And this will also really help us from an investigative standpoint to be able to do some of those site audits, to show up at construction sites and see if you know, if we have an MBE that's supposed to be utilized for concrete work, that their trucks are there, that they're doing the work, that we're not seeing another concrete company that we haven't approved for any substitution taking away that work improperly. So these are all things that are going to be in those reports and then, of course, flow into the annual reporting. We're really excited as well. We have a data scientist to join the team. This is going to be pivotal for us bringing further intentionality of looking at the numbers and what they mean in real life dollars and impacts throughout the city. As we speak about equity and community development and the work we do with Main Streets, a lot of this is going to be really looking at those numbers to see where the dollars are going, ensuring they're going to the folks that are on the BOE memo that are approved by you all to get those dollars. So there's no lack of utilization, but for emergencies, but for a change in scope of work. We want everybody to get every dollar that's on the memo when you all approve it. So when we talk about annual reports moving forward, we're going to be doing an annual report for FY24. It should be before the board next month. But that report, of course, is looking backwards, so we won't have all of that robust data we've been speaking of. But as we move forward, it should be FY25 moving forward. We're going to have a lot of that data we were talking about. When we look at the annual reports, we're going to now be able to really dive into those numbers and not just kind of have a cursory regard of how well an agency is doing. We're going to be looking deeply into this. This is a conversation I'm going to be having with members of the board as we move towards those future annual reports to really make sure we're speaking to the aspects of utilization and diverse spend that you all want to see in that reporting, and then we're answering any questions that you may have for the agency proactively within the report. And then again, some additional analysis is going to be in there. We've had conversations with the mayor and Madam CAO about what we're looking for out of our annual reports. One of the things we're looking to do is to get closer to something akin to what you see in the DC Green Book, where we're going to be doing agency by agency, definitely for our major procurement agencies and capital construction, profiles of their spending from those agency dashboards and giving them an opportunity to put their data in context. So we're going to have those pure numbers, but then we're going to give each agency the opportunity via the annual agency reports for them to kind of give the spin on why that might have happened, whether that was a project that went sideways, whether that was emergency work that took away some MWBE utilization. We'll be able to see all that via the data that's going to be in those dashboards and the breakdowns. But we are optimistic as we're working on this work. We've really been working to make sure we have clean and accurate data. So we're starting from a fresh space to move forward so that we're going to be able to really do that analysis that's much needed here. When we talk about the agency annual reports, as I said, a lot of the things that have been varying in the degrees of effectiveness of their reporting has really just been due to the fact that while this has been city code and part of the Minority and Women's Business Program, we never made any of these agency requests until until I took over at the prior office at IMBU. We now have multiple years of these requests. We have given a template now that was utilized in FY24 reporting. We saw much better reporting, but still with the lack of data, it's difficult to have a very precise and narrow conversation about NWBE utilization. So now as we move forward and see the actual data from the agencies, we'll be able to much clearly tell who is succeeding and who is failing to a degree and needs that additional support to get there. And one of the things that we're hoping that's really going to allow these numbers to grow is unbundling and providing more opportunities for MWBEs. When we have citywide contracts, really taking time to think about, do we need to do it at this dollar value and at this citywide level? Can we break it up geographically? Can we break up even some aspects of the service? But doing so makes it takes away a barrier to entry for MWBEs that may not be able to get the insurance, the bonding capabilities of the $10 million large contract, but they may be able to do the subset $1 million contract. And that's really something that we're passionate about. We're going to be continuing to train the agencies to make sure they're really aware of their role in providing those opportunities. We went over those prior challenges that have been in place. So one of the things we're going to be doing is providing, provide all that data so they can give us those robust reports, and they should be as we move forward. I do want to especially thank Auditor Pash, Deputy Auditor Mung, their team for all the work they've done. They've been a pleasure to work with and really serve a valuable function to the city in this audit process. And I definitely want to thank my SMB A&D team. They've done so much in such a short period of time to bring some of these new process improvements to the city. And I know we're going to be seeing a lot more of these positive steps as we continue to work together and move forward.
Thank you, Director Lundy. I'm going to make a comment before opening it up to questions from the mayor and others, which is, first off, appreciate the comprehensive presentation and your passion for it. As a city, we have often struggled in integrating new data management systems, whether that's Workday, whether that's other systems. And so I was glad to hear about both bringing on staff to assist with trainings as well as the online trainings and so on and so forth. I will just say, I think it is really important, not just that we have this new system or that we are able to integrate data over, but that folks know how to use it, and that agencies, everyone that touches it, is really clear so that there is not muddle that gets introduced and creates all kinds of new problems. So I will just say, on behalf of myself, that spending the time on the front end to invest in the overall capacity of the system, not just from your office, but from any other agency that touches it, I think is critically important. With that, we'll pass to the mayor for questions.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Director, and thank you for this great work. I know it's been a labor of love, but I just wanted to ask a simple question based on the auditing team and the work that you guys are doing. As you work over these next few weeks and months, when do you expect that all of the things that you need to have the auditor's findings in place, and how quickly do you think you'll be able to do that through the work that you guys are doing now?
I think we're going to be able to do so optimistically prior to the end of the fiscal year. We have the templates that we've been utilizing for this past reporting we did for FY24 for the agencies. We're finishing up the contract compliance review. We've actually had to bring in some temp employees to make sure that we're really doing diligent review of all of the contracts that were in there. And we had a few hiccups with Workday, but we've now identified all the challenges and are doing a complete review of everything that should be wrapping up this month. And then we're going to be moving forward with goal setting, and that likely should be next month. So this spring, we should be fully operational. But again, we are doing contract compliance reviews in the system. Folks are getting the monthly audits for primes and subs that are on active contracts. And we will just be fully using it. So there will be no reviews happening outside the system by the time we get to that point, Mr. Mayor.
And thank you for that. And my last question is, where did you get the embroidered SMBAD cue cards that you have?
Oh, you know what? This is DIY. Like we did not get time to get our heavy duty card stock yet. But my communications guy, another great addition to the team, is always worried about our branding. So we're always trying to make sure people know that we're here. And I'd be remiss to not say that we have our Small Business Resource Center at 3000 Jewett Park Drive, and then the Analog Online Resource Center in SourceLink that's always there for the businesses if you need any help on writing business plans, trying to navigate any zoning you may have for common businesses like barbershops, hair salons, ice cream parlors. We're trying to be that support for businesses, and we have even more people we've brought on board that are passionate about helping the business community.
Director, I appreciate that. This was the integration, resolving the data migration was supposed to be due back in March 2024. Is that right?
Yes, this is definitely, in terms of B2G, we are behind schedule. We've unfortunately been behind schedule.
Yep.
There were some issues with the data file to make sure we were capturing all of the active contracts in that monthly migration, so that was kind of one hurdle. We had an issue with some POs that weren't fully attached to contracts that we discovered post-go live that we've now resolved, and we've been working intimately with BSIT to make sure those scripts are correct and accurate. And then the greater problem has been the fact that there's no goals in Workday. So for every contract that comes over currently with the goals not being listed there, we have to do a manual review to ensure that that contract either received a waiver, and if it does have goals, that we have the right number. So if it's supposed to be 15% MBE, 5% WBE, that is accurately listed in the system. So we've literally had to do a one-by-one review of each of those contracts.
So in the interim, how are we addressing the inconsistent reporting on minority and women-owned subcontracting goals? For example, I believe the Department of General Services had to withdraw an item from today's agenda because their published SMBAD goals were incorrect. Can you explain what the office is doing to avoid those types of situations in the future before the integration fully
Sure.
occurs?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're committed with our compliance team to, for one, we've added a chief of compliance, so we have a more integrated structure that's overseeing that program, and in addition to a deputy that's overseeing the Minority and Women's Business Program, that is just specifically focused on ensuring that everything that falls under certification, contract compliance with the post-award, and then ongoing post-award investigations, that all of those processes are happening accurately. One of the things with goal setting that we're doing is making sure that we're fully, and this has been an ongoing challenge just with that process, that we're fully communicating with the agencies so we have complete information about the contract, that they're fully entering in the full scope of service, and that we're working with them. One of the ways we're doing that is we're meeting with them on a regular basis, our frequent flyers in the procurement process, if not weekly, bi-weekly, and at the latest monthly, so that we can have those conversations to iron out any nuance, any details in the contract that might not have come across, so that we can accurately set goals. And then, of course, when we get to the electronic goal setting coming up, it'll just be fully taking into account that information, and it'll be computer generated, so there'll be no room for that human error. So that's where we're trying to go with this entire process to the extent we can, is that the system generates a lot of the information, and we're just doing the double checks of that information as opposed to us doing manual calculations that could potentially lead to that human error.
I would again say that there is always room for human error, even
Indeed.
with a good system. So would reiterate the previous point that paying attention on the front end, I think, is going to pay dividends to how folks utilize the system. So again, in the interim, does your office have a uniform expectation for what's included in agency reports, sort of speaking to where you just were? How are we working with them?
Yes. Oh, and I forgot one last thing to your prior point in terms of making sure we're getting those things right and that we're relying on the system properly and inputting properly. One of the things we're also doing is going to the vendor B2Gs conference coming up this spring to have some additional guidance and training on some of the particular things that, although we did training during the development and onboarding process, getting that additional expertise now that we're in it, now that we've encountered some of the challenges and difficulties, whether it's internal to our team, agencies, or vendors, that we can kind of bring more of those issues to bear and get additional guidance firsthand on those. And I'm sorry, Mr. President, and then to your current question.
Expectations around agency reports.
Oh, yes. As far as the agency reports, we have given a template to the agencies now of what we expect to see in the reporting. Initially, since it hadn't taken place, we did get a lot of varying styles of reports with varying degrees of information. Now we're asking for specific information about their efforts, programs and initiatives they did to further MWBE participation, any MWBE data that they have on their contract spend for the agency or for particular types of work that exists currently, but this will be lessened in terms of that template or the burden on the agencies as we have the data, because then we'll be able to give them all of that information and simply say, here's the data we have for your contracts, for your MWBE spend. Please put into context, why you're beneath our city aspirational annual goal of 27% MBE, 10% WBE. What are the things that you're doing to improve those numbers? And frankly, what are the challenges that exist in the type of work that you do that lend themselves to potentially needing more waivers, to being a federal or state pass-through agency that doesn't get a lot of general funds, so we can kind of put context as to why that spend looks like that and not just simply vilify that agency, because we have some agencies that, the health department, for example, that passes through a lot of funds from federal and state level that we're not putting goals on because of the fact that it's simply a pass-through. So we want to make sure everybody has good context on the performance of the agencies, and that we're not unfairly vilifying people. And honestly, that's why we didn't include limited data that we do have available that we could have pulled from FY24 in the new annual report, because I didn't want to give an incomplete picture to the agency heads, in fairness to them, of potentially a quarter or half a year, when the full picture would maybe paint something different from a data standpoint.
Understood. Before going to Comptroller Henry, we'll just note, appreciate your enthusiasm for this new system. I think in an effort to modernize and to make our city more efficient and effective and transparent, we often purchase these types of data management systems. I think it's a good thing to try to get best-of-class systems, but again, if the human component of it is not clear and clicking in terms of how it gets utilized, we then see problems and it carries on. So just for a third time, we'll say, I think it's going to be really important that everyone who touches this thing is well-trained in how to use it so that there's no confusion moving forward. Mr. Comptroller?
And I just want to say, I 100% appreciate that point. We are going to be doing additional trainings, and we're also looking for additional ways to interact with our agency community and also the vendor community to have other opportunities for them to bring any questions and concerns to us so everybody does feel heard and prepared to interact with the system.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, it is still,
I was gonna say, are we still there?
Yeah, it's still morning. Okay, we're still morning. I just wanted to make two comments first, that it's not that it never happens, but it is the rare agency response that feels more extensive than the actual audit that it was responding to. So I do want to congratulate you on providing us with a large amount of important information this morning, but also as someone whose office has also spent years trying to modernize operations that were not as effective and efficient beforehand. We are especially appreciative of the work that you've done, and want to add in additional praise for being an agency that has received recommendations from audits in the past, really taken them to heart, and worked tirelessly to make sure that the agency is so much better run now than it used to be. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. I very much appreciate that. And I thank you for the partnership you've had, because your team has been instrumental in allowing us to not let things get to the board that don't have clear information about goals, where people are representing that they have a waiver, but there's no actual proof of that. So your partnership has been instrumental, as well to the city administrator and the mayor. We really have changed this process, even in my time, so that it really is robust, and we really do make sure we have the answers before we move forward. And I really appreciate that dedication and commitment to the minority and women's business community, and making sure that we're not just moving things along for the sake of urgency or the agency's desire, but we're making sure that we actually have the right answers and that we're really assisting our small business community, especially at this time. So I thank you all for the support.
Thank you, Director Lundy. Seeing no further questions, this item is noted by the board. The next item on the non-routine agenda is SB 2414771, Department of Audits. This request is to note the biennial performance follow-up audit of the Baltimore City Recreation and Parks for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2023 and June 30th, 2022. On behalf of audits, we have...
Good morning, Council President and the honorable members of the Board of Estimates. My name is Sandy Mao, and I'm the Deputy City Auditor. I am here to present the audit results from the biannual performance audit follow-up for the Department of Recreation and Parks. First of all, I would like to publicly thank Department of BCRB for their cooperation and the audit team for their hard work. Next slide, please. This is the agenda for today. First of all, I will go over the prior audit objective and scope, and then summary of implementation status of prior findings. Then we will dive into the prior findings. Next slide. The prior audit objective was to determine if BCRB equitably distributes operational and capital budgets. Our scope included proposed budget, approved budget, revised budget, and actual expenditures. Also, we focus on the park maintenance division. The current audit objective is to follow up on the prior findings included in the prior biannual performance audit, which was issued in December 2022. Our scope is on fiscal years 2022 and 2023. However, there is one finding which we originally followed up in calendar year 2020, and originally written in calendar year 2020, and we follow up on it in 2022, and this is our second time following up on it due to the high risk. Next slide, please. There were 4 recommendations that we follow up on, and our conclusion is BCRB implemented 2 recommendations, partially implemented 1, and 1 was not implemented. Next slide. The finding number 1 is related to BCRP park maintenance, operational, and capital budget. For the operational budget, there is no process to evaluate equity once setting the operational budget. For the capital budget, there is a process, but there are no formal policies and procedures to guide the staff for scoring and reporting. We also noted that BCRB does not have written defined benchmarks to determine how equity points should be awarded to a project. We were told that BCRB considers community proposed budgets in their annual proposed budgets plan to the Department of Planning, but we did not find any evidence of that. When there are projects delayed or when the projects have not been initiated, BCRB reallocated fundings from one project to another, but we did not find that BCRB reevaluate the impact on the equity. Also, there are no established baseline and equity plan, and we also noted that actual expenditures and actual locations of previously completed projects were not evaluated to evaluate the progress towards closing the equity gap. Next slide, please. So here are the list of recommendations for the finding number 1, including evaluate and document an equity assessment when setting the operational budget, consider equity impact when funding is reallocated from one project to another, record actual expenditures and actual locations of previously completed projects to analyze progress towards closing the equity gap. Our assessment is BCRB did not implement any recommendations. They hired equity coordinator during the course of our audit. Next slide, please. Finding number 2 is related to park routine inspection practices. BCRB has 273 parks with 5 park managers. Their plans did not include a required minimum number of quality assurance, quality control periodic visits. There are no documented and aligned methodologies for the selection of QA/QC visits. BCRB is solely relying on the park managers' experience how to best structure the routine visits. The managers, they use the QA/QC forms, which is based on the grading system of yes or no, but there is no criteria for determining if the answers should be yes or no. There is no consolidated QA/QC results, which is the data dashboard to allow managers to be able to have a real-time snapshot of their park evaluations. Also, this dashboard will help manage their time to be even more responsive and successful. So our recommendations for finding number 2 were determine an appropriate methodology, then document the methodology, maintain evidence of QA/QC inspections, design the QA/QC form to allow for uniformity, and consider improving from paper method to electronic documents, and work with the information technology to build up on a data dashboard. Our conclusion is partially implemented for this finding. Bullet number 1 was addressed, but not the others. Next slide, please. Finding number 3 is related to the BCRB's Excel file, which is they used to accumulate data on potential capital projects. This file was not spots were protected and was not restricted. There were significant numbers of capital project staff had access to this file. So we recommended the director of BCRP implement a data security policy that restricts access to authorized user and protects data integrity. Our assessment is the recommendations were implemented. Next slide. Last but not the least, the finding number 4 is related to the pool permits. Since fiscal year 2018 to fiscal year 2023, BCRP did not obtain the annual operating permits from the Department of Health. This was not in compliance with the state requirements, so we recommended the director of BCRP to ensure the Aquatics Division obtain the annual operating permits. As I said before, the original report was issued in calendar year 2020. We follow up on these findings in calendar year 2022. At that time, the recommendation was not implemented. This is the second time following up on it, and our assessment is the recommendation was implemented. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions from the board? All right. Thank you. We will now bring up Recreation and Parks for their response. Madam Chief.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr.
Morning.
Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, esteemed board. I am here this morning on behalf of Baltimore City Recreation and Parks and our esteemed director, Dr. Reginald Moore. So we wanted to come and provide some update
You can just
on-
say your name and job.
Oh, I'm Josiah Smith. I'm the Chief of Staff at Baltimore City Recreation and Parks. Our director is now Dr. Moore, so I just wanted to publicly say it for the first time.
Understood.
All right. Yes, okay. So I'll go to finding 1. When I was here 2 years ago for our first finding in this regard, I think I professed that we would come back with a different story. And despite the recommendations that we do accept, I think we are headed in the right direction. Since the last time we were here, we have hired our equity coordinator. She has begun her work internally, working with staff, forming affinity groups, and just changing the atmosphere of what it means to work in recreation and parks. I think more profound, though, is the work that we've been doing on our playbook. We started this work as a part of our Rec 2025 strategic plan, and for the last 2 years, we have been engaged with our consultants who have taken a deep dive into equity as it relates to Baltimore City and our capital and operating landscape. We are very close to finalizing that plan with our consultants, and that plan includes an analysis of all of our assets. So one of the things that we wanted to do, to the comptroller's points, is make sure that our decisions are data-driven. When Dr. Moore came to the agency about 8 years ago, we were in receipt of an agency that had a lot of outstanding plans and priorities that didn't appear to us to align with what we knew for our resources and just the priorities of the administration at that time. When we set out to do our playbook, the comprehensive plan, we wanted to take a pause and to really look and dive into the data to make sure that our decisions were in fact being driven by equity. So the plan took the time over the last 2 years to complete condition assessments for both our parks and our assets. And then from there, we were able to arrive at what we believe will be a roadmap for the next 20 years. If I can go to the next slide. So a part of this plan, our consultants have been able to provide for us the community investment need score based on our assets. So what you see on the screen is a heat map that will eventually be a part of our published plan. But the heat map gives us an idea of where it brings context to the needs of the community along with the condition of our assets. Some of the questions that the consultant took into mind when they were weighing the community needs score is what or where would historically and underserved communities be best benefited from investment for rec and parks. We took a special look at youth, where our investments would best impact young people. We looked at income, education, and health, where our investments would impact low-income communities with poor educational and health outcomes. We also looked at violent crime and where our investments in rec and parks could support safety and wellness, population density, where would our investments most impact the most people, and then the extreme heat to figure out where investments could lend to protect against hotter climates. So we took our data from our needs assessment on the condition of our assets, we overlaid that with these community factors, and we arrived at our community needs score. So the plan will basically prioritize for us, based on that criteria and data, the priority of where we should be spending our capital dollars. Additionally, it gives great context about our operational needs. Based on our assets, how many people we should have doing the work. It's bringing alignment to our system so that our recreation divisions line up with our park bureaus, our park division, so that we can better assess information we get from 311, so we can better align our resources to different communities. We are extremely excited about the work that we have endeavored with the support of the mayor and city administrator with our consultants and looking at Rec and Parks in a much more intentional and equity-based factor. The plan, again, is on its eves of being approved and ready for public consumption. But what we can say, over the time that Dr. Moore has been at the leadership of Rec and Parks, our capital investments have been in spaces and places where we know investment is needed. So we have over $120 million in capital projects that we have. We have invested in playgrounds, pools, rec centers, you name it. And those capital investments align with what we believe will be our roadmap over the next 20 years. So as it relates to finding number one, our overall response is that we have been engaged in the work since the first report in December of 2023 with our consultants. We are very near with being able to publicize and socialize the findings from that very robust report that is, in fact, data-driven. And we look forward to the progress that we'll have together in that regard. As it relates to finding two, in the interest of time, because I thought the first finding was the most interesting, but in finding number two, we talked a lot about our park routine maintenance and how our parks team is evaluating their QA/QC of those parks. So under the direction of our Deputy Director, Edward Willing, we have initiated a QA/QC process. That process has gone through refinement since our first findings in 2023. We have made sure that all the park districts are using the QA/QC form. We now have a central collection. Our next phase is to actually have a dashboard where we can see in real time where we are fielding those conversations. Internally in Rec and Parks, we have what we call ParkStat. We have copied the city's process, and we meet with our parks team quarterly to go over the SRs as we see them from the system, to map them out and see where we are addressing the needs of the community, in hopes that once we do have our dashboard online, that it will be able to better direct our work. And then for findings 3 and 4, the capital Excel file that tracks our capital spending is now password protected, so we were able to implement that. And same thing with the swimming permits. We have, in fact, and for the record, have always had our pools inspected. This was just an administrative hurdle of payment of those permits so that we can actually have them in hand. And that would be the conclusion of our response to the findings, but I will stand ready for questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chief, for presenting on behalf of the Dr. Director. Can you talk a little, I think it's warranted to go a little deeper into the investments that you guys have been making and where they have been made, even while we await eagerly await the playbook. Can you talk about, I think that's very important. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, but when you see where Rec and Parks investments has been over these past few years, I think it speaks very clearly and loudly to equity and investing in those places.
Sure. We spent a lot of time, and City Administrator alluded to it, over the last 2 years in expending our ARPA dollars in our playground investments. Those playgrounds were, again, ranked by their condition, and then also by the last time they had been invested in it. And all those 26 playgrounds had been underinvested in. So that was the first huge big step as it relates to our equity work. But then if we talk about different investments in Towanda, where the mayor grew up, we were at Bocheck 2 weeks ago to do a groundbreaking for phase 2. So if you look at the investments that we've had from Middle Branch, we have been investing intentionally in spaces that have been underinvested in. And as we look at what's coming on board, we have Chick Webb and Parkview. So all of our investments, if you if I were able to pull them up, which I should have, we would be able to show that our investments, particularly over the last 8 years, have been very intentional in, one, spaces that have been underutilized and underdeveloped, but then also those spaces that have, on our community needs map, on our heat map, they align with where our investment and our dollars have been.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Smith. Mr. Mayor, one more.
I just want to make sure we clarify that we literally can't open the pool without a permit. So
Yes.
as many people that I saw swimming at pools last year, just want to make sure that everyone knows that. I don't want anyone asking me why we had pools open without permits. It does not happen.
There is not a single pool in Baltimore City that we operate that is not operating without the proper permit. I can tell you that our aquatics team work extremely hard. Starting around March, they start to plan for the summer, and our coordination with our colleagues at the health department has been phenomenal. So no, every pool that Baltimore City Recreation and Parks operate is doing so under the proper permits.
And then the last thing I would just say, as we walk around and work through pushing the playbook out, I think it's going to be critical that we do that storytelling of these investments that you're making, but with the backdrop of what hadn't been done, the disinvestment that hadn't been done, whether it's Bocheck that was, a rec center that was closed for 20 years that now, even though the one that we have currently, I wouldn't consider a rec center because it doesn't have a gym, but we will now have one with the expansion, whether it be Towanda or what's going to happen in Brooklyn and Curtis Bay. I think it's important for us to tell that whole story so that people can understand that the agency and the city is looking at things in a different way. Thank you, Mr. President.
But also on that point, I would like to lift up, if you look at the capital projects that we have been completing, I think it tells the story of where we know we should be. We should not be in a small field house like Bocheck. Our young people should be able to enjoy the spaces like Middle Branch, like Cahill. So with our new projects coming on at Chick Webb and Parkview, they will be much more aligned with what we believe the vision of recreation and parks will be. Our consultants have confirmed what we've known. Calling some of these buildings a rec center is a disservice to our young people, right? The color of them, the amenities that are there, the space that's allowed for them to grow and create and play is inadequate. So what we have done over the last several years is in our design, we have challenged our capital team under the direction of Chief Boardman to think bigger, to think what we should have in our communities. And sometimes the price tag is scary. We are grateful for a mayor who sees the vision and who buys into, we believe that every child in Baltimore deserves an adequate space that doesn't just include a gym, but has maker space for STEM, that has dance studios and workout facilities for adults. So our goal and our alignment for the playbook is to make sure that the recreation centers that we do have are in line with our vision for 21st century recreation. So if you look at our recent projects and those that will be hitting the streets soon, you'll see that rec and parks from before, and those resources are not aligned with where we need to be. So you will see a difference, and I hope you have seen it already, but those projects that we have pending are aligned with that vision for 21st century recreation centers.
One more, Mr. Mayor.
I was just going to say I couldn't say it better myself, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Smith. Definitely appreciate the commitment around, as the mayor has often said, rebuilding our rec centers, rebuilding in a way that honors our communities and is not just, mediocre, but is real. Having had some consternation over previous issues with a pool, probably the one time the mayor and I fussed publicly, I appreciate you all ultimately making sure that that pool was then opened. I'd say there were some communication challenges along the way. Can you talk about coming into this next summer, pools, what the status is? I don't want to drift too far off of this audit, but I think it's also important as it is a really critical key function of what your agency does, especially given because of climate change, we are having unusually cold winters with a lot of storms. Then we're having unusually hot summers as well. And so it's a critical function.
Sure. So this season, we will have more neighborhood pools online than we've had in the last, let's call it a decade, right? So there are pools that had been offline, and you all know Director Moore is the capital guy. I'm the people person, so I won't be able to name all of them. Coldstream is one of them. But we have pools that are coming back online. So what that means for our aquatics team under the leadership of Chief Cobbs is, one, we are leaning into our recruitment season to make sure that we have enough young people and lifeguards trained and ready to go. I want to give a shout out to our aquatics teams. While other people were struggling with lifeguards, we've done a really good job of retention and being able to staff all our pools. This year is going to be bigger than before. So if there's young people or parents who are listening, if you have an interest in being a lifeguard, one of the first things we have to do is make sure it's staffed up. We are considering things operationally to make sure that everybody has access to a well-functioning pool. What we do know is that our pools are heavily used, and that's requiring us to kind of look at operations to make sure we are optimizing that. But we are gearing up for summer. We are getting our orders and supplies prepared. We're staffing up. Our HR chief, Ms. Green, is making sure that we have enough young people to serve this summer. So what you can expect is that our pools will be open. You can expect the consistency and experience as it relates to what the lifeguards and the pool staff are telling all neighborhoods and users, regardless of where they are. So we want a safe summer as our first priority, safe from heat, but safe from anything that would be of harm to our users or our staff. So we are gearing up for a safe and fun summer.
Thanks, Lucia. Sometime in the next 4 weeks, the council is going to ask for a report out on pools heading into the summer. We want to be as proactive as possible to avoid any consternation or frustration. So please look out for that. You were the second agency to experience trauma-informed care training. Can you talk about how that also has contributed to strengthening both your equity approach, but also just staff interaction within Rec and Park?
I think the trauma-informed care work that we have done is probably the one program that I think most of our staff internally felt, right? It was something that we required of all full-time staff to participate in, and we've even gone a step further. We have engaged the provider to continue that work with us.
Yes.
They were here on Tuesday doing some work with our senior team. So it helps guide how we interact with each other and how we interact with the public. For example, when we are wrestling with the consternation around pool access and rules, how our employees feels matters to us, right? While we have an obligation to be responsive to the community, we have an equal responsibility to make our staff feel seen and heard. So for us, it does mean that we are much more empathetic and understanding that our staff, as well as our community, are up against things that some of us couldn't imagine. So in making our rules, engaging in how we discipline employees, how we look at the work, it has, I think it has made us pause more than we did, right? We are a fast-moving machine attempting to meet the needs of everyone, but it has caused us to pause, to rethink some things. One of the stories I'll tell in 30 seconds, we had some staff folks who had gotten to a disagreement. We were able to call some of our colleagues in Muncie to kind of come and talk to these young men where they had threatened violence against each other. But through that conversation and through the collection of city agencies, we were able to de-escalate. Those young people still work for us and they are thriving. Before trauma-informed care, they would have been fired, right?
Yes.
That would have been the natural course of order. But because we are looking and operating with that lens, we are doing so with much more intentionality that we as humans need to be seen, heard, and valued.
I really appreciate that. I want to lift up that Baltimore remains the first city to have legislated trauma-informed care, and I really appreciate how your agency in particular leaned into it and sort of went all in, and that you're continuing to work with the provider. And we'll also just note that even when I was having tension with your agency over Patterson Park Pool, that deeply appreciated how that conflict was managed by all parties, and I thought it reflected some maturity and just, again, appreciate you all embracing that. I also want to lift up Dr. Reggie Moore, as you said, who completed his doctorate. We always want to have our staff, even if they're the director of an agency, continue to grow in their knowledge and academic pursuits, and we're proud to have him as our newest doctor on board.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. President, I just want to jump in again. I think that it's important for us to note The chief is modest. She is not the good doctor who loves to brag. That's not her thing, unless it's Delta related. So I'll have to do it for her. When we think about where we were in the state of pools 5 years ago versus where we are now, we're talking about night and day. We're talking about pools that, for example, the one if you just drive down Harford or up Enzer, that literally had a metal fence in the middle of the pool until we renovated it, right? Pools that didn't have bathrooms for the entirety of their existence, which means that they, from when they were built, in some cases before even the comptroller was born, and we know how long ago that was, right? They were out of compliance with federal regulations. And yes, we did have to have some tough conversations around Patterson Park, right? But we had to, we say have like some realization for us all, right, about what has to happen in order for us to get the pool that we have at Patterson, or for us to have Drew Hill Park Pool, or for us to have what's going to happen at Coldstream and Towanda and all these other places. But I think that the department itself has done such a great job of making this investment and doing, quite frankly, what city government has been afraid to do for far too long, and that's tell people the truth, even if they don't like it, right? It's hard to tell someone that, like, okay, if you want your pool to be renovated, then guess what? It has to be shut down for at least a year. And then, hey, sometimes COVID shows up and it becomes 2.5 years. We have to have those real conversations with folks if we're going to continue to do this work, because as they go through and do more, there's going to be more disruption. But spending a lot of time out at Drew Hill Park Pool in the summertime, because it's Saron's favorite pool, everyone that goes there says it was well worth the wait, and that's what it's about. And I appreciate you and the comptroller and everyone for supporting Rec and Parks in this, and just know that as we go through what they're about to present to us all, there's going to be more of those conversations and more of that responsibility that comes with that investment, because they've been doing a great job. And now we have bathrooms at pools, and people can use all these things. You have pools that are safe for people of all ages and disabilities. You have the ability to get what you would get at, quite frankly, swim clubs in our surrounding counties, and I think they've done a great job. So I just wanted to lift that up because she was being bashful.
Appreciate that, and we'll also note and appreciate partnership with our state partners. They've been extremely helpful. I know in the case of Patterson Park Pool and securing funds, and I think the case of several pools. So in addition to the partnership between the council, the mayor, the comptroller, and Rec and Park, also want to thank our Senate President and our entire city delegation in Annapolis who've been champions in that work as well. Madam City Administrator.
Sure, thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak before the board. I just wanted to ground us in a few numbers related to pools. So last year around this time, we had 23, there are a total of 23 pools and splash pads that are in our system. And last year around this time, back in 2023, we had about 16 of those open. And a number of them were under design, or one or two were closed for renovation. And so I just want to walk through those lists, because this board has been a party to all of those pools now being in the process of being designed and renovated. So 23 in our system. We only were able to operate 16 in 2023. So here are the pools that we've been able to do. So Patterson, which we did the groundbreaking on last year. Ambrose Kennedy, we completed the groundbreaking on. Towanda, City Springs is in design. Greater Model is in design. So you're talking about 6 pools that we were able to renovate and then Coldstream. Sorry about that, and Coldstream. So you're talking about 6 pools that we were able to renovate and or are actively renovating and taking through the design process. A number of those pools will be online this summer. A couple, so Greater Model, I think won't be, I know, fingers crossed. Greater Model, I think that one won't likely be done until the end of the season, so it'll be ready for next season. But when we think about where this city was as it relates to our recreation facilities and our parks across the city, we were not in a position where we were able to renovate this many pools. And so I do do want to take the moment to acknowledge Dr. Moore and Jasia and the mayor, right? This is the mayor's baby, investing in our young people and investing in Rec and Parks. And so this team has done a yeoman's job as it relates to pools and recreation centers across the city. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to ground us in the data about where we were and where we are now going into this pool season.
Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you. I actually wasn't going to talk about pools, if it's okay. I try really hard not to focus on any specific council district anymore, but I was listening to the mayor talking about the rec center he remembers playing in as a kid, and when I came on to the city council, the 4th Councilmatic District had 3 rec centers, and there's only one left now, and it is the one that I played in as a kid in a decade that I will say precedes this side of the dais, I believe entirely. But that's why I would ask if you got something over there in your schedule for an expansion and renovation of the Dewey's Rec Center.
Yes. So Dewey's Rec Center, along with one of the gifts of the playbook, right, is that it does ground us in the facts, right? So what we often come against, and it's not particularly to Baltimore, but in government, that people have projects that are very near and dear to their heart. Well, I don't have the scoring sheet of where Dewey's lies on our priority list. It is among the centers that need to be invested in. So what the playbook does for us, it allows us to have a level set conversation. Our goal is that once we are able to have it finalized and approved, that we can coalesce everybody's energy in alignment with what the priorities are, regardless of the districts that some people represent. So what I can tell you is that I don't know where Dewey's is on the priority list, but I do know that it is there. And I do know that our goal and our plan is that we would be prioritizing our investments based on the need score with the community score. And Dewey's, based on what I understand, what I know, I believe is in the top half of that list. Because I can narrow it down.
Because what I would be curious if this counts as part of the community need is the distance to another operating recreation center.
So when I talk about the data, and I want to thank our leadership, both the CA and the mayor. They've been on this journey with us of re-looking at the data and combing through the data and remapping the data and looking and looking and looking to ensure that we are able to ask those hard questions. When we get to the discussion about who, what, and where, we want to be able to say flat-footed that we looked at that we considered it, that we mapped out how accessible it is to the surrounding communities, what the adjacent network of public transportation looks like. So we've done all of that analysis. We're in the final stages of it being finalized. But those are the type of considerations, with a note that we want to build more middle branches and less baby boat checks.
If you would like to build a middle branch level recreation center where Dewey's is now, I don't think anybody in the surrounding area would try to stop you. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. I think what is messy and enjoyable and great about government is that we get to sort of sort through all the different demands and asks and issues around equity and issues around efficiency and who gets investment. And, I think there's real intentionality on the part of this board in trying to figure this all out. I will throw one more in there, which is I'm interested in how Rec and Park, and maybe this is in the playbook, but how we're thinking about sort of community proposed projects and the voice of residents, the voice of community, the voice of, in some cases, friends groups in how we're thinking about prioritizing capital projects.
So sure, I'll give a little bit of context to that. So when we arrived at Rec and Parks, we were met with a myriad of master plans from different organizations, different community groups. And what I would challenge, similar to the 311 system, communities without voice are not usually coalescing to do a master plan. So what we have to do, I think, as the government is kind of balance that out. So certainly having a robust and supportive community that's ready to help fundraise and to make, bring things into fruition is important. But equally important is a neighborhood where no one calls 311, where there isn't a community president, but the investment is glaring. So I think that is the rub for us. What we inherited was a bunch of plans from a bunch of communities who had voice. That voice did not align with the needs. It didn't align with disinvestment. So what the playbook will do is to bring some ground set into that so that we are having data as the root of the conversation. And when we deviate, that we, as the government, are ready to say so out loud, not out loud and bold that we understand this is inequitable and we want to do it anyways. I would challenge as a city who is rooted in equity that those opportunities will be much more limited than they were before.
I appreciate that. And I think it is important for us to plant real markers around equity and not deviate. I also do think, though, one of the other goals that I have, and I know this board has, is civic participation and is strengthening in this moment where we see some of our small d democratic institutions start to fray at the national level, strengthening the ability of people to engage, reach out, help to form and mold their government, that things should feel participatory and that communities should have a voice regardless of income, regardless of race. And so I think it's an important piece to both balance the need to really prioritize an equity approach and to not just disregard, because when communities put a lot of work into a master plan and then we throw it out, I know, having been on that side, it is highly discouraging and can actually stifle further democratic, small d democratic participation in the process. And so I think both need to be a priority. I think the messiness is what Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, and I all really enjoy, is like trying to parse through and get to that sweet spot. But I will just say, I think that I do want to just lift up the importance of community voices, no matter what part of the city, no matter how much access folks have, that I at least, and I think we as a board, as a city, as Rec and Park, want people to participate in their own communities and in the assets that are in communities and to help to shape these processes. And just a comment, I'll go to Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you, Mr. President. I promise this is my last thing about this. I think I appreciate that, and I know that Rec and Parks does a great job of that, but I also want to just, again, level set us in the balance of sometimes we have to do what's right. So I've been through this many of times, but for example, with some of the rec center projects where Rec and Parks has been doing this, asking the children, right? Like, what do you want to see in the rec center? Something that they never did when I went there, right? Like, the reason why I never swam in Towanda Pool is because I could just walk the Drew Hill Park pool. They never asked us those kind of things. But I think that we have to have a balance too, because we know that sometimes I remember very vividly having conversations about folks when Rec and Parks is adding lights to fields where community groups and others would say, we don't want that because we don't think the kids should be practicing late night, right? But, well, football in the fall, the kids get out of school at 3:30, 4 o'clock. It's already dark. We have to do what's in the right decision, and sometimes that is going to be in direct opposition of what folks from organizations and institutions want. So we always have to listen to everyone, but make sure that ultimately we're doing what's in the best interest. In Rec and Parks is a case is for our children and families mainly.
Appreciate that point, and definitely appreciate the point about engaging our young people, engaging our elders, making sure that voices who are not going to naturally jump out and talk to the agency are still part of the process. I think all parts are extremely important, and that, again, the agency is responsive and reflective to community needs. Without further ado, not seeing any further questions, want to thank you for spending some time with us. Again, congratulations to your boss for completing his doctorate. This item is noted.
Thank you.
The next item is SB 2510-530, a professional service agreement from the Department of Finance. This request is to approve a professional services agreement with PFM Group Consulting LLC to provide a series of compensation analyses for the city's public safety and civilian bargaining units. On behalf of Finance, we have Director Laura Larson. Director, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Council President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, members of the Honorable Board. I am Laura Larson, the city's budget director. I am bringing this contract to the board for consideration. Specifically, there are three projects that are part of the overall scope here. The first is to support the city as we go through a comprehensive fee update. The last time we comprehensively went through all the fee structures that the city assesses was in 2008. And so PFM will be supporting my revenue team as well as the city agency partners to review the cost of services for all those different fees and then offering recommendations for what the new fee, the revised fees should be. As part of that effort, they will also offer recommendations to streamline our fees where there's opportunity to consolidate and offer recommendations for how the city moves into a cycle of routinely updating them. We believe that this work will get underway this spring with the goal of bringing specific recommendations from that study back to the Board of Estimates and City Council for their consideration late summer, early fall, so that we can put those new fee structures in place as soon as possible. The second scope of work is supporting the ongoing labor negotiations that are currently active with all of the bargaining groups that represent city employees. And so as part of this work, PFM will assist us in doing comprehensive labor analysis to assist with different proposals that are put on the bargaining table with all of our union groups. One thing to note here is that we have traditionally had this contract in the past. It's been a contract between the external law firms who are representing the city in those negotiations and this organization. I'm proposing to have the city hold the contract because there's a lot of really valuable information that comes out of this analysis, and by us, the city holding the contract, we're able to make sure that the analysis is meeting multiple business needs and not necessarily something that's narrowly defined at the bargaining table. And then the third item is provision for ad hoc support for financial analysis on various projects. Again, this is intended to be a multi-year agreement that we could pull from based off of any number of projects where we may need additional support or outside expertise to help us complete any sort of fiscal analysis, especially like on a tight turnaround time where we internally in the city might not have access to various data. I do want to note that the scope of these projects and the nature of them is temporary. They're not situations where we have recurring additional work that would necessitate additional permanent staff capacity within the city. These are also time-bound projects where we're trying to move very quickly, especially on the labor analysis. We want to make sure that we have that information as quickly as possible as these negotiations are ongoing. And so that is why we're pursuing the route of a contract versus assigning this to existing city staff. I will also note that this particular firm is an industry leader in terms of maintaining very comprehensive information about when it comes to doing peer analysis, whether that's for labor contracts or other very municipal focused items, which again is why we're leaning into their expertise and requesting the contract. So with that, I respectfully request the board's approval of the contract, and I can answer any questions that you may have regarding the request.
Comptroller Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I don't think the question is for you as much as it might be for the city solicitor, and I also don't know that it's one that you'd be able to do off the top of your head. But if I could put a pin in this now, does the fact that the contract is now with us as opposed to it being with outside law firms retained on our behalf alter the status of whether their work product is public information?
No, that's still going to be, if anything that they do that's work product, they are an extension of the law firm if we're hiring them. So if they have anything that they do on our behalf, that's still going to be covered under work product.
Okay, Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you. Very good.
Just, if you could, just reiterate for the board, I caught it the first time, but if you could go a little deeper into why bring this in-house versus in the past, we've had outside firms doing it. Share with me why you all feel that's an important move.
In regards to the labor component?
Yep.
I believe that provides additional transparency around the contract, because if it was being entered into with the law firm and the organization, we're never bringing it here before you all for consideration. But with that, I also believe that there is an opportunity. We are incurring this cost, whether it's being managed by the law firm or by a contract that's held by the city. We're incurring that cost either way. And what we can do here is that by us holding the contract, we can ensure that the analysis that's being performed is meeting multiple business needs of the city, rather than what may be very narrowly defined in terms of something at the bargaining table. So just for context, as part of what this scope of work would include is, doing comparable analysis regarding the total compensation package that's offered for an individual unit or an individual union. So that may mean that's going to be looking at wages, but it's also going to be looking at benefit structures that are offered by us compared to other jurisdictions. It's going to be looking at different provisions of the contract that may impact other types of pay, like overtime or different items like that. It may also involve looking at things like scheduling. And so by us holding the contract, we're able to coordinate with the directors for those different agencies to make sure that the analysis that we're getting is not only helping us at the bargaining table to accomplish whatever we're negotiating with the unions, but it's also helping that any sort of insights that we can gain there to help them think about how their staff deployment or think about how they're structuring their staffing model, that they're able to use those insights for that purpose.
Understood. I appreciate the work that PFM is doing and that the Labor Commission has taken this approach that we can control the contract a little bit more and potentially reduce our own costs in this area. Looking forward to supporting you, Director Larson, and the administration in our effort to ensure that we get the best services possible on contracts like these so that we're not beholden to a single vendor and can sort of move away from sole source.
Certainly.
Appreciate that. Not seeing or hearing other questions from the board. Thank you, Director Larson. I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. This motion is approved. Next item is SB 2510-358, Department of Law. This request is to approve a settlement agreement and release with a homeowner and her family who experienced a series of sewer backups at their home over a period of about 16 months. On behalf of the Law Department, we have Deputy Solicitor Stephen Salisbury. Mr. Salisbury, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Council President, Mr. Comptroller, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Stephen Salisbury on behalf of the Law Department. So as the Council President said in the introduction, this settlement relates to a series of backups at the property of 1543 Northgate Road that took place in the 2022 and 2023 timeframe. Which is a little bit of housekeeping. There's actually 7 plaintiffs. It's the property owner, the tenant, the primary tenant, who was the property owner's cousin, and then the tenant's 5 children, who all had separate claims. But the total $204,000 would resolve all the claims under this matter. So just to give a little bit of a time frame, the lawsuit arises out of at least 6 different sewer backups between March of 22 and June of 23. I think there was actually, going back even to November of 21, issues with the sewer line at this property. Throughout that time period, DPW came out on numerous occasions to perform work and ultimately to perform repairs. The big question that we, understand is at the heart of this is if DPW came out repeatedly, why weren't these repairs completed? What was the issue? Why did these sewer backups keep recurring? I think that based on our investigation, based on our review of the matter and discussions with DPW, what happened was as DPW was initially coming out, they were doing CCTV. They were putting a camera down to review the line that was ultimately identifying debris, other issues. Those are being cleared out. But there were other structural defects that did come up that ultimately it took a long time, at least about a year, for DPW to get construction crews out and repair those. And so while they had gone out repeatedly to clear out the sewer line, the lateral line that connects the property owner's house to the city's main line, they were not really fully resolving the issue. As a result, these are, as we're all aware, these are really horrible experiences for residents. There's raw sewage throughout the residents' basement that they then have to go and get cleaned out. And again, in this case, you're talking about 6 separate occasions where the backup was occurring. So based on the facts, based on, the fact of the city sort of being, put on notice, these recurring issues, the law department is recommending a settlement in the amount of $204,000. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy. Madam Solicitor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So the deputy knows that the sewer backups are a point of a lot of distress for me. They almost don't want to bring these up for me to review them because it's so distressing. But I do want to highlight a couple things here. The first, as we were talking about the mapping, and the comptroller brought that up. I thought that was a really good point, and I think this is something that really could be utilized, and I'll let the mayor address a lot of the initiatives that he's taken really to promote equity in this space, because I think this is a real issue with equity. That if we look at where we're seeing, I haven't done it, but as I'm reading several cases and I look at the zip codes and I see that these are products of neighborhoods, products of disinvestment for decades. And I'm looking at this specific fact pattern where we have an owner, a tenant, and 5 children that were being homeschooled. And just the horror of having to do this one time, but doing this 6 times, and having children live in this condition, where this is avoidable, because we're looking at $204,000 that if this had been addressed, I can almost assure you, although I don't have the math on me, it would definitely cost us less to fix that problem on the first or second time, especially when we're going to have to fix it anyway, and now we're going to have to pay $204,000, not even considering what a person would have to go through 6 different times. And that's why when we talk about another reason why I think the mapping is so important, because when we're talking about equity, where, as the mayor has stated, we all know these things, but to actually have the data to back that up, I think that's very, very important, because not only does it make sense to do it, because we are now paying $200,000 on something that I feel that could be completely avoidable, but especially on the first or the second time, but we are putting someone through a condition 6 different times. So the other issue with this was the funding of this, and the comptroller brought this up earlier, and I wanted to let him know, because I did a deep dive into this, that I was actually wrong. I thought the money that we were paying is coming out of sort of like a more general fund, but there is a wastewater utility fund that everyone pays on their water bills, that's allocated a portion of this to this. And I think that's important, because I admit that we got it wrong in terms of where the funding was and putting the codes on and things like that. But I think it's important in terms of tracking, as we're going back to the mapping, and tracking how much we're actually spending on this. And when we look at, if we can see where these areas are, to prioritize where we're going to actually fix the infrastructure underneath that keeps causing these. And that's what I'm really frustrated with. It's just, do we have a plan to do it? What does that plan look like? Can it be modified based on the data that we get in real time? Because it's tough to keep paying these sewer backup claims, especially having to defend, knowing that no one should have to go through this definitely 6 different times. So I just wanted to raise those things up. Those are just points of frustration for me.
Appreciate that, Madam Solicitor. I think shared frustration across the board. I will appreciate just what a horrific situation that indeed is, particularly the piece about the homeschooling. That is truly awful, and the need to get ahead of it instead of dealing with it on the back end as we're now doing. I also want to thank Councilmember Paris Gray, who has been actively engaged in a lot of these conversations about sewage backup. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Mr. President. I think one of the things I want to say first is just for everyone's and the public's information is that we have been negotiating with MDE and our partners around this issue in the consent decree and our hearing agreement, and we'll be having a more public announcement around the sewage backup program itself very shortly, I hope, as the Director of Public Works knows. But I think it's so important to note some of because we've all experienced it, right? I think the comptroller will remember when it happened to my parents, right? So we know how long we've had this issue. I want to take the moment to talk about some of the great work that DPW has been doing, when we talk about sanitary sewer overflow. So it's been a 48% decrease since 2018, 84% decrease in overflow volume since 2018. But I think the thing that is really stood out to me, that we've spent now $1.6 billion between the consent decree and the modified consent decree to work on this issue, and 72 out of the 77 sanitary overflow structures have been eliminated through that work. Just in last year, they cleaned 101 miles of sewer, 94 miles of sewers that were chemically treated for root intrusion, and we had 1,230 food service establishments inspected for fats, oils, and grease discharges, because we know what that does to the system. And they will continue to decrease the SSO volume 10%, but the cost for that is $320 million. And they'll continue to expand the maintenance program and voluntary inspections, and we're going to do everything that we can. I can't go into the details about the sewer program as that's being negotiated at this particular time, but I want everyone to know this is an issue that we're taking very seriously and going to continue to work on with all of our partners.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Comptroller?
Yeah, so I do want to thank the mayor for the metrics, but I do see that we have some folks from DPW here, and I know we can't go into some details because they're still being negotiated, but is there any high-level information you can give us on process improvements, just, the measures that we're pursuing to lessen the frequency and severity of the sewer backups? Like, we know the numbers are coming down. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing that is doing that?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Matt Carbark, Interim Deputy Director for the Department of Public Works. I'm joined with Acting Bureau Head Steve Sharkey and other members of DPW as well who can speak to this. This is a critical, these issues are critical to our work on the consent decree, our original 2002 and then modified in 2017. One of the big areas is the act of cleaning and of the sewer mains themselves to increase capacity. So there are a couple of different, basically 2 different types of backups. There's wet weather and dry weather. Wet weather is caused when there's precipitation. It infiltrates into the sewer mains. It causes a backup. We know that there are capacity issues there because the mains can't drain as fast as we want them to. We've addressed some of that with the headworks improvement at the Back River plant. We also have a whole list of areas in the city that we're going to upsize the mains. Dry weather events are different and a bit more complicated because a lot of that is stuff has gotten into the line that clogs it up. This is fats, oils, greases, rags, other things like that. In this particular case, Madam Solicitor is absolutely correct. We should have addressed it before 6 times. That's absolutely goes without question. Our issue is we tend to go in there, the first thing we look at is blockages and how we can clear them. And what the maintenance crews apparently did was to remove the blockage, and only after a number of occasions found that there was a structural defect that we then referred to the engineers and to our construction team. So we are focused on our capital improvements to upsize the mains, redo the mains, clean those, reline them, replace them. We also have created, Mr. Sharkey, do you want to talk about the customer engagement, some of the work that we have with engaging with our customers on this issue?
Good afternoon, Steve, or morning. Steve Sharkey, Interim Bureau Head. Interim Bureau Head, Water and Wastewater. Can I stand up here? All right. So, yeah, we have, I've been, of course, dealing with quite a bit of interesting things here, and I want to really make the Bureau work together as a unified whole across all of divisions and sections. So we've instituted UMD STAT, which includes a cross-cutting group that has been focusing on sewers, and we're even breaking that out. So we are internally meeting every week. I am meeting each week to improve the operations daily and focus on sewers and follow-ups, along with our customer escalation unit. So we want to be a little bit more proactive. I think we can talk about how we can kind of coordinate better, but on the back end, we also need to hire more. So we're working really hard. I get updates every week from DPW HR on every type of position that we're hiring for to make sure that in a year or 2 years, we can build the staff back up to the level where it is. So because we do have quite a large number of vacancies. And especially this internal staff, it takes a lot to build them up, but we definitely need them to be internal staff that are properly trained and ready. So that's sort of the primary piece. Luckily, we did just hire 4 new camera operators, so that's sewer camera operators that we've just hired. They will need to be trained, but we need information first and more proactive action second.
Thank you, Director Sharkey.
I like to add one thing.
Yep, Director Zaid.
Yeah, we just met yesterday with one of the rating agencies, and one of the major items that they brought up at the meeting yesterday was they were very happy with what we have done with the work with the sanitary overflow. So that's one of the things that they brought up at the meeting, and the amount of work that is done, and some of the statistics that the mayor have brought up today is a product of that as well.
Appreciate that, Director Zaid. All right. Hearing and seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. This item is approved. The next item is SB 2510533 for the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. This request is to approve a professional service agreement with the Baltimore City School Board of Commissioners for employment activities with the YouthWorks program. On behalf of MOED, we have Mac Kenzie Garvin. Director Garvin, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning-ish, afternoon. Hi, I'm Mac. Good afternoon. I'm Mac Garvin. Good afternoon, City Council President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, members of the board. I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. I'm here this afternoon to briefly speak to you about this contract that we have with Baltimore City Public Schools. It's for about $325,000. It's a 3-year contract. This isn't necessarily something new, but we're doing a bit longer. It's about $100,000 or so each year to serve around 45 students in YouthWorks to fund these positions. They're targeted positions for our young people who are in CTE programs. This year, the target is for early childhood education and for dental tech. They will be paid the $15 an hour. It's part of the YouthWorks program for the 5 weeks up to 25 hours. This just really showcases our partnership that we have with Baltimore City Public Schools, very specifically the Office of Secondary Success and Innovation. Just to note, when I was coming here, I just checked my email and I got an email from the Accountability and Implementation Board for Blueprint asking us to actually present at the meeting next week because our partnership is so strong compared to everyone else in the state. So this is just building upon that and leveraging the work that we're doing within the schools. This is an opportunity for those young people to be able to receive credit towards their license for their CTE work. So, are there any questions?
Yeah, Director Garvin, one, just appreciate always the YouthWorks program. I wanted to bring this item. I think a lot of times when we bring folks to the board, it's because there's a problem. In this case, there is not a problem. In fact, I think this is one of the better things that Baltimore does. And I think it's important that we as a board lift up not just the areas that we need to improve on, but the things that we're doing well. Most cities are not able to employ 7,000 to 8,000 kids over the summer. Baltimore is consistently. That's your leadership. That's our private sector partners. That's all the folks at MOED. That's all the agencies that participate. That's our nonprofit partners. That's groups like Baltimore's Promise, and on and on and on. And I just want to note, I think it's important that YouthWorks takes an extraordinary amount of collaboration, and it's just something I'm proud of. And it's something that the city, when you have something for a long time, you can kind of take it for granted and kind of forget that it's somewhat unique. A lot of cities have summer jobs programs, but I think ours is, we employ more kids on aggregate than most. So I just want to appreciate that publicly. I also will say, in really good collaboration with Mayor Scott and City Schools Commissioner Dr. Santelises, starting to have some really good conversations about how we can better support workforce pipelines. I know that's a lot of work that your agency does. I think there is a lot more that we can do collectively, whether it's around CTE, whether it's around grads to careers, but to make sure that we are building the next generation of leaders, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And I think that YouthWorks and MOED can play a profound role in that. I know it's one of my goals as City Council President that as a city we can earnestly say every child that graduates from our school system is able to get either a great career or a college opportunity. And I know your agency is going to be central in supporting that work. With that, I see Mayor Scott's got his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I look forward to that partnership work. And I think the answer really is both. Like I had the opportunity to do either or when I graduated from high school. But just because we're talking about YouthWorks, I never miss an opportunity to have the director remind us of when the deadline is, so we don't have people's mamas calling me or sending me messages on Instagram about why their kid can't get signed up for YouthWorks. So, Madam Director, if you would remind everyone when the deadline for YouthWorks is for 2025.
The deadline is April 4th. That is the deadline. So it's coming up soon. So I did want to say thank you very much for those compliments regarding YouthWorks. It's a very large undertaking, but it's a very important workforce strategy that we've implemented here. Summer youth employment programs are a highly evaluated workforce strategy and intervention for young people, and so I'm very proud that we can offer summer youth employment at the scale that we've been able to offer it over the years. We'll have to continue to examine the scale of it with the cost of minimum wage going up, but we know that it's a very important intervention for young people. In terms of the way that we're working in schools now, again, going back to the partnerships that we have. At the baseline, we have a very strong partnership with schools. We have a very strong partnership with Baltimore's Promise, and I think starting out with that as a core really helps us to be innovative as we think about how to prepare young people for the future of work. One of the ways that we're doing that, of course, is our career coaching model that we have in schools. We have 46 employees at MOED who are working in schools at over 100 schools right now. They've already served over 17,000 young people. We've created a scope and sequence model starting in the 6th grade. So if you're in the 6th grade middle school, you become career aware. So we're implementing what's called the RISEC model, where they learn, you know, what if they're into what's realistic or artistic. And so we already have over 3,500 middle schoolers that can articulate their transferable skills. Moving into 7th and 8th grade, they start to understand career awareness. And so they're going out to job fairs and they're connecting with employers. By the time they're later in high school, the idea is that they become career explorers, and by the time they're a senior, they're experienced and ready. And so it's really important to make sure that the workforce system and the education system are aligned, and that's what we're doing now, integrating into that system. With the partnership that we have with Baltimore's Promise, we're working with them. We were already working with them on the Grads to Careers model, so we were identifying those young people that said that they were not going to go to college and helping them move into occupational training. But last year, they also announced the Career Bound model, where we're partnering with them, and we're also partnering with CareerWise through Talent Ready to increase the number of student to apprenticeship pipelines. So there's a lot of work and collaboration happening now, because we know that we have to be intentional about changing the narrative about everyone going to college. College is still a very viable option for young people, but so is the military, so is registered apprenticeship, and so are opportunities to go into occupational training.
No, I think that's right. I think there's a bit of a corrective for sort of a push that was made to send every kid to college, and I think we are course correcting, and I think it is important to know that you can have an excellent career and not incur a bunch of debt, whether that's through, like you said, an apprenticeship or any of our trade schools, our meds and eds have plenty of jobs. I think there is a lot of room as a city for us to grow in this area, and it is going to be a priority of mine. I think enlisting our partners in the private sector to really invest in hiring our young people in this city is going to be a key priority, making sure that they feel called in and that they're part of how we guide the work of sort of building those pathways. I think is extremely important, but again, appreciate the partnership, you all, Baltimore's Promise, Grads to Careers, all the work that's been done in this space, and I look forward to accelerating it over these next couple of years in partnership with you. Thank you, Director. Not seeing any other questions from the board. I will note this item, and thank you, Mac.
Thank you.
All right. Actually, apologies. I do have to entertain a motion to approve this item. Sorry about that.
moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Item is approved. Next item is SB 2415094 for the Bureau of Procurement, BOP. This request is to approve an unauthorized procurement for a contract with Versaterm, tell me if I got that wrong, Public Safety US, Inc., to support the Baltimore City Fire Department. On behalf of procurement, we have our Chief Deputy Procurement Officer. The floor is yours.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable members of the board. My name is Bolu Oluwasuji, Deputy Chief Procurement Officer. This case is a case of where fire department has a contract with a company called Adashi. The contract was good up to January of this year. However, sometimes last year, sometimes last year, Adashi was acquired by another company called Versatam, and it took a while to get Versatam into the system. So within that period of time, there was no payment because Versatam was not in the system, and Adashi is already acquired. So we are requesting the board to approve the payment to Versatam during that period, the transition period between the two companies.
Thank you. I will take questions from the board. I see Mr. Comptroller.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the best way to start this, but is it that? Tell me more about what Versaterm actually is doing for the city.
I made to realize that it's for EMS patient transport, and Mr. Good is here from fire department to come.
Yeah, there we go.
I'll just say good midday.
Okay.
Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, and the rest of the members of the board. Versaterm or Adashi contract is for incident.
You're going to have to tilt the mic up.
Incident management.
Could you please state your name and what you do?
Sorry. Edmund Good. I'm the fiscal officer for the fire department. The software is used for incident management. The operations department, after review of everything, determined that we were not utilizing it to its full capacity and finally determined just to cancel out the contract. So this is to pay for the service up to that point because it is a system as a service.
Okay. And have we already secured a new contract for managing this data going forward?
Operations has, I've re-asked them, they have still stated they are not interested in going forward with this software at all. They have a manual process they can use, and they feel financially it's better to just do the manual process.
Oh, okay. So it's not that we're getting rid of Versaterm and we're going to be switching to somebody else.
Correct.
We're just not going to use software?
Correct.
That seems counter to how we have been trying to modernize efforts. Tell me more about the process that you'll be using instead of using outside
From what
software.
I have seen from operations, they have gone to an after-action report and have been pushing that out through the internal bulletins to the firefighters so that they are made aware of the findings from each incident so that we can address it through training and so that we can address it through policy changes.
But is anybody going to continue to be tracking EMT patient transport data?
No, this is not EMS data. That's image trend. Versaterm is incident management.
Okay. So image trend is tracking patients.
Correct. Image trend is a software that we utilize. It's required by COMAR. And that's where we input patient data from our ambulance pickups and transfer to hospital. And the hospital then goes ahead and assumes that information. We internally, if we are requested to provide reports to lawyers and so forth, there's a fee, but we go ahead and pull those reports and send them out.
So Versaterm wasn't tracking transport data, it was just tracking incidents?
Incidents such as fires, events. For example, Labyrinth Road would have been an incident they would have used. It is not used with the ambulance transfer.
Okay, I get you. All right. Okay. But now we're not going to track incidents we're not going to track that. We're not going to track incidents by incident. We're just going to track incidents by patients.
No. We have an incident management group within fire. So they are in they start up whenever we have an incident.
Okay.
Patient transferred of somebody being picked up from their house and taken to the hospital would never be an incident. An incident is a multi-building fire or those sorts of situations where there's a large fire response that we then want to track overall what is happening.
Okay, let me see if I can give an example
Sure.
of what I'm trying to picture.
Yeah.
There was a fire the other morning on the 300 block of East University Parkway.
Yes.
A number of people who lived in the fire were displaced by the fire. If the council person for that district reached out to the fire department and said, I need to know what happened exactly in terms of how many people were living at the house when the fire happened and how they got displaced and did any of them get injured. That would, you would have someone query image trend?
They would query image trend, but they will also have, we have an internal records management system, fire records, that other information is put into.
And what is that? What system is that?
It's its own system called Fire Records.
Fire
In fact, we have, through the Board of Procurement, we're trying to, that one is another company, bought that one out. They are ending their services on that platform because they want everyone to transition for their other software. And so we are asking for a consultant to review how we use our fire records management system and to come up with specs to best suit our needs.
Okay, well, I'm beginning to understand why somebody said maybe we just don't need Versaterm at all because you have multiple other
Correct.
software platforms tracking other aspects of this data.
Correct.
Okay, all right. That's I think, all I need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Any other questions from the board? Seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The item is approved. The next item is for the Bureau of Procurement, SB 2415005. This request is to approve an unauthorized procurement for a technology licensing software agreement with Resource Information and Control Corporation to support event management with the Baltimore Convention Center. On behalf of procurement, welcome back.
Thank you, President. Bolu Oluwasuji, Deputy Chief Procurement Officer. This is to approve unauthorized procurement for event management software. Convention Center has been using this software for quite a long time. Sometimes last year, they enter into another professional services agreement with another company, which they use their software, I think, doing the event management and some other benefits. So, but during that period of time, the company, the new company, was not in Workday. So it took a while. When they submitted the requisition was returned back to Convention Center because the company was not in good standing with the state of Maryland. So, and during that period, because the company was not in the system, Convention Center keep using the legacy system because of the continuity of service. And now this contract has been established in Workday, and we're requesting the board to pay the money accrued during that period of transition between these two companies. And Deputy Director Costa is here to answer any technical question.
Come on up, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council President, Comptroller, and honorable members of the board. Phil Costa, Deputy Director at the Convention Center. Mr. Bolu mentioned the process. The initial requisition was placed in February 2024 for this software for a contract period of May 2024 to April 2025, and then due to some of the delays with Workday and with getting in good standing with the state, we were starting the software after the initial start, or continuing the use of the software after the initial start of the contract. So we recently, during our conversation with the comptroller about this matter, we were made aware that in this situation, we could have utilized an emergency purchase for this authorization. We previously were under the understanding that those emergencies were for public welfare and safety and that this would not constitute one of those. But we have been made aware of that, so should we ever find ourselves in a situation like this, then we would utilize that process for this situation. But I'm happy to answer any other further questions related to this.
I got Mr. Comptroller Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Quick, just to be clear, what's the timeline for moving to a perpetual license?
So we actually have a long-term contract with a new software that we are in the process of transitioning to.
Right.
So we've had this current software that we're speaking about now for multiple decades, and we're moving away from that software and moving to a new software. But all of our event data for the past decades are in Concentrix. So as we're starting the new software, we're kind of using Concentrix to transition that data over. So we have a new software that we are going to be using for decades to come, hopefully. And our old software, we will kind of phase and sunset out after we're able to move all the data into our new software.
Okay, so you're already up and running on the new platform. It's just a question of exporting data from the old system,
correct,
the legacy system,
yes,
into the new.
That is correct.
And what's your expected timeline for porting all of that data?
So it is a manual process, and we are getting close to the end of that process. We anticipate at least doing one more one-year contract with Concentrix, the legacy software,
Really?
because of the transition and just ensuring that that we have everything we need moved over. But we did not want to enter into a 3-year, 5-year contract with the legacy software if we actually end up only needing it for a year. We're kind of taking it in smaller bunches.
Okay. And I guess the other question is, what controls have you been able to put into place to avoid future lapses in communication when identifying vendors that aren't in good standing?
That is a good question. So, I mean, for us internally, I mentioned, the controls and the knowledge that we now have related to the emergency. Hopefully, we don't even get to that process.
Yeah.
I think from our procurement side, with our accounting team and our procurement team, it's just a matter of communicating with those vendors. And this was something that, candidly, I don't think we had dealt with, and this company had not dealt with in the multiple contracts that they had with the city previously.
In fairness, this might have been a question for central procurement. Does procurement have, as part of its standard process, confirming that vendors are in good standing?
Yes.
Okay.
We normally do that before we issue any supplier contract or any purchase order.
Okay, but now I'm wondering what happens if a company goes out of good standing mid-contract? Does the city have a responsibility to be checking as we go to make sure that if they go out of good standing, does that address our need to keep paying them?
As at the moment, we don't check their good standing mid, except if we have a board action. If we are coming to the board, that's when we check. Because, the contract administration section is not available in procurement. But now that it's coming back, that's the group that will be taking care of, checking the status of the companies.
But procurement checks if there's any type of transaction that's coming to the BOE.
Yes.
Then, so anything that's coming to us, the vendor that we're approving payment for or a contract of, that is something that has already been confirmed by procurement that they're in good standing.
Yes, I mean, it's confirmed at multiple levels. The procurement to confirm it, and when we go to the law department for agreement, law department also confirm it. So,
Okay, the law department also confirms it. Okay, that, I'm not sure.
even your office too.
Pardon?
Your office, controller's office, they still confirm if they are in good standing or not. So a lot of times, if you send something to the board, and if they are not in good standing, they reach out to us that they are not in good standing. I said maybe that just happens once in a while, but
Okay.
That's always multiple level of.
I think we might follow up on this offline. Okay, all right. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. This item is approved. Next item is SB 24-10431 for the Bureau of Procurement. This request is to approve a sole source contract with Industrial Monitoring and Control Systems, Inc. to support the Department of Public Works on behalf of DPW. I got Director Garbark on this one, but you're back.
I can just introduce this one, and then you can. The Bureau of Procurement is requesting the board to approve a sole source award to company Industrial Monitoring and Control System. Historically, this company is a sole source because the company installed the initial system, the SCADA system that is used by DPW, and they have been responsible for maintenance and repair of this system. This is just to continue the ongoing maintenance and support for the system. Deputy Director Gabard, first member.
Thank you very much. I'm Matt Garbark, Deputy Director, Department of Public Works. As was mentioned, this is a continuation of a contract with IMAX for our SCADA system. Those are the control systems for our plants as well as for our pumping stations. This company is working to maintain the system that we have and is also going to be used to help bring the new system that we've contracted for that's under construction now online in 2027. We have a very manual-oriented system right now. These are systems that monitor the processes at our plants, looking at the meters, sensors, controls, other valves, pumps, all sorts of things. It provides alerts to the staff. The new system is going to be a lot more intuitive. It'll be cloud-based. This company is going to be helping us transition into that, and in the time being, it is going to help us manage and maintain that system that we have right now. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Why wasn't this competitively bid out, this contract?
So we've been using this firm in the past. They're aware of the systems. It's also a very unique system. These are very specialized, and this is something that we work with this firm on, and that we would use them to help transition, so they're already aware of this system.
Okay. Do we have plans to solicit bids in the future after the SCADA?
Yes, sir.
System is complete?
Yes, sir. We're actually going to be doing that in 2026. The system is expected to come online in 2027. We're going to be working with the Bureau of Procurement to get a permanent maintenance contract for the new system in 2026, so it'll be in place before the new system comes online.
Got it. Just to a sort of previous line that we've talked about on this board previously, how are we building our own internal capacity to reduce reliance on outside contractors generally for this kind of work?
Yes, sir. This is something where This is the system itself is intended to help control the plant operations. So the way it works is we have internal staff who are the operators and the technicians utilizing the system. They monitor it at control stations. They input data, take data away from it. We also have a maintenance crew, a whole maintenance side at the plants that actually respond to issues in the plant, the processes, issues that need to be repaired. This is a maintenance contract for the system itself. So this is something that we are not looking to bring internally because of its specialized nature, and given the need that we want to have people who are specialized, who are experts in this field, and who can come in and help fix the system when there is a system issue. It's not something that we're going to need all the time. Our focus is going to be more on the operations and the maintenance of the plant operations. The system itself is expected to perform normally, and we wouldn't need a full-time employee or staffing to help provide this support. So we do think a contract service for this is warranted.
Got it. Appreciate that. Hoping, again, as we've discussed in the past, that we are building our internal capacity within DPW. Looking at you, Mr. Director. I fully understand that on this system, and I think, as we've discussed pretty extensively, we have a long way to go in building our internal capacity to manage our workforce and all of the various contracts that we have going on. Again, appreciate it, Mr. Garbark. Any other questions or remarks from the board? Seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The item is approved. As there is no more,
I have one.
Mr. Comptroller?
I have one bit of business for the good of the order. As many people are aware, if we make it as a country to next July 4th, America will be 250 years old. Far fewer people are aware that 3 days ago, the Board of Estimates became half that. We are, as a Board of Estimates, we are 125 years old this year. The first Board of Estimates meeting was March 2nd, 1900. I will state conclusively, in case the mayor decides to make a joke about this later, I was not there. But my staff wanted to take the opportunity to share that fact. I'm also what's the expression? On the advice of council, I will not be leading a chorus of happy birthday to the Board of Estimates, but I did want to take a moment to make us all aware of that before we dismiss and move on to the remainder of our workday.
Thank you, Professor Henry. And Mr. Mayor?
I would just point out that the comptroller was not there, but I'm pretty sure there was a Mergenthaler printing press being used somewhere for BOE that he probably just got rid of last year, so thank you.
Duly noted. As there is no more business before the board, we will now adjourn this meeting. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 at 9 a.m. I thank everyone for participating and tuning in. Baltimore, stay safe and keep warm.
Thanks, TV25, for being patient. Good afternoon, everyone. Bear with us for just a few minutes. We're getting ourselves organized because Board of Estimates meeting ran long today. Casey, did you bring your laptop in? Because I can't pull up the file on this. So I'm going to fill in on yours if that's okay. Sorry about that. I forgot it was on this other device. Okay. So we are opening 5 bids today, but first I'm going to share a few addenda changing opening dates. For the Department of Transportation, TR 25007, resurfacing highways at various locations, Northeast Sector 1. This bid will now be opened on March 19th, 2025. Also for transportation, TR 25008, resurfacing highways at various locations, Northwest Sector 2. This bid will now be opened on March 19th, 2025. Also for transportation, TR 25009, resurfacing highways at various locations, Southwest Sector 3. This bid will be opened on March 19th, 2025. And finally, also for transportation, TR 25010, resurfacing highways at various locations, Southeast Sector 4. This bid will also be opened on March 19th, 2025. And I believe that is it for addenda. Casey has given me the thumbs up. And we are going to start with 4 bids, all for transportation today. And we'll finish up with 1 for Public Works. First up, we have for transportation, reconstruction of footways citywide. This is contract TR 25001. And up first.
Good morning. Up first, let me make sure this is capturing. Up first, we have a bid from J Villa Construction Incorporated and I'm looking at the bid bond now for TR 25001.
So yes to bid bond.
Yes to bid bond. And and the total bid amount is $1,382,000.
Okay, that number was 1,382,000.00.
That is correct.
May I see a copy, please?
Let me ensure this is.
And we have an original and...
We have 1 original and 1 duplicate.
And 1 dupe. Thank you. And that number was $1,382,000.00. And that bidder was J Villa Construction, Inc. And I'm going to give you the copy back, Casey, for the stack. Thank you. Up next.
Sorry, a lot of documentation here. Okay, the next bid is from... Priority Construction Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
I have 1 original and 1 duplicate.
Got it.
And the, hold on, sorry, give me a minute. Tawanda, you can stop tabbing these, okay? Because there's a bunch and you don't need to have them anymore. I got it. And the total bid is $1,617,115.
Could you repeat that, please? Thank you.
$1,617,115.
Okay. That number was 1,617,115.00.
That's correct.
Do we have a bond?
We do have a bond.
And may I see a copy? Thanks. That total was $1,617,115.00, and the bidder was Priority Construction Corporation. And yes, we have a bid bond. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a bid from Santos Construction Company, Inc. And the total bid amount is $1,809,325.00.
That number was 1,809,325.00.
That is correct.
And do we have a bid bond?
And we have a bid bond, and one original, one duplicate.
Okay. And confirming via the copy. The total is $1,809,325.00 for Santos Construction Company, Inc. Thank you. And was that our final?
That's our
So that was our final of 3 bidders for reconstruction of footways citywide, TR 25001. So up next, we have also for transportation, reconstruction of footways citywide, TR 25002.
Correct.
Are we looking at the same bid?
We're looking at the same
002?
bid, and we're gonna have deja vu because I believe we have the same bidders for all 4 transportation bids.
Okay.
So first up, J Villa Construction Incorporated. I have one original, one duplicate.
Okay.
We have sorry. Give me 1 minute. Okay, and we have, the total bid is $1,346,000.
That number was 1,346,000.00.
That's correct.
Do we have a bond?
And we should have bonds.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes they're on the left-hand side if they double copy.
It's in the duplicate.
One day this will be digital. I say that prayer out loud every time. I like to be on the record with that prayer.
I wish we had music to play when I have to flip through this.
Would it be like the Jeopardy music?
Like the Jeopardy music?
We could hum it. I have to do this all the time, like 1 page at a time, because there's, not always consistent where it's going to show up.
Okay, there's a copy, but
I could get the
that's not
Jeopardy
legally
music on my
sufficient.
phone, maybe. You want me to look in the copy while you're looking at the
Well,
original?
There's a copy of one of the last pages. Oh, it's on the front page, everyone. Once again, it's always the last place that you look. That's too convenient, but also different in every bid, so.
Yeah. Again, digital bidding would solve these problems. So I'm going to confirm the number in the copy is $1,346,000.00. And yes, we do have a bid for a bond for J Villa Construction, Inc. And up next, oh, here's copy back. Thank you.
Okay, up next, we have a bid from Priority Construction Corporation. I have one duplicate, and one original.
A what? Okay.
And one hard time today. The total bid is $1,620,980.
Sometimes your pauses trick me.
So
So
it's just to keep the diction light and interesting.
So that number was 1,620,980.00.
That is correct.
Correct. And we do have a bond
You know, we likely do.
somewhere. And you can hand me the copy and I'll verify the,
Yep, the bid bond in a different place than the previous bid.
okay?
So the studio audience knows that I'm not just another millennial that has trouble with paper. We have a bid bond. Here's the
We will
duplicate.
vouch for your excellent handling of paper most of the time. Let me go to the total and verifying that the total is $1,620,980.00. And that bid was for Priority Construction Corporation. And
Okay, next up, we have a bid from Santos Construction Company, Inc. I have one original and one duplicate.
got it?
Why is this like this?
Is it in a new place?
It's just the fact that there's a lot of stuff in here. Okay, the total bid amount?
Yeah.
$1,664,090.00.
Okay, that number was 1,664,090.00.
That is correct.
And can you
Here's
find a bond
the duplicate. Oh,
in under 5 minutes?
You know,
No pressure. Not your
maybe
fault.
it's the
Not your fault.
Serenity Prayer that should be playing.
Okay, so I'm gonna. What approximately page was that total on? Do you have any idea?
105.
Thank you for remembering that. Okay, verifying that total is $1,664,090.00, and that bid was for Santos Construction Company, Inc. Did you find the bond? Because I did. I found a copy.
What page
that
is
what you're
your
looking
copy
for?
on?
It was way toward the back, I think. Yeah, it's 148 is the page number.
Got it. That is where we are. I think. Yep, I have a bid bond.
Thank you. And that was our final of 3 bidders, yes?
Yes.
For reconstruction of footways citywide, TR 25002. Up next.
We have.
Are we ready? Wait, 003. We're on the same one.
We're in 003.
Reconstruction of footways citywide,
Correct.
TR 25003, also for transportation, of course.
Correct.
And probably the same 3 bidders.
J Villa Construction Incorporated. I have a bid bond.
Thank you.
I have a duplicate. I have a original.
Great.
And original.
And our bid amount?
The total bid is $1,256,000.
Ooh. Formatting has betrayed me. Hold on for just a second. That was 1,256,000.00.
That's correct.
Okay. Can you share a copy with me, please?
Here's
That total was $1,256,000.00, and that bidder was J Villa Construction.
Page 105 on this one.
Did you switch from tabs because it's easier to not have all the stickies? Because it's too confusing with all the stickies.
All right, so our next one for TR 25003 is a bid from Priority Construction Corporation.
Okay.
I have a duplicate. I have an original. And the total for this one is $1,616,400.
1 million.
$1,616,400.
Okay, I heard 1,616,400.00.
That's correct.
And do we have a bid bond?
We have a bid bond.
Thank you. Copy? Sorry, something is driving my allergies crazy today. Okay, confirming that total was $1,616,400.00 for Priority Construction Corporation. Thanks.
Bid bond is on 105 and, I mean, bid bond is on 148 and the total is on 105. Oh, you did this one?
Okay, for our next one, we have Santos Construction Corporation, Inc. I have a duplicate. I have an original.
Do you want to give me the dupe? Thank you. Thank you.
And the total bid for TR 25003 for Santos Construction is $1,385,410.00.
Hold on, your pause tricked me again. That was 1,385,410.00.
That is correct.
And we have bid bond?
We
Sorry, you guys. I have it on 130.
It should be in the
Oh, no,
back.
that's
I'm
the
just looking
affidavit.
for it. Yep, all right, here. We have a bid
134?
bond. 148.
Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing.
That's fine.
Yep.
And a bid bond for Santos.
Okay. And confirming that bid amount was $1,385,410.00 for Santos Construction, Inc. Thank you. And that was our final of 3 bidders for oh, there's one more? For TR 25003?
Oh, this is 4, okay. This is on 4.
Yep, that's for 4. That's why I always read them out loud too, just to make sure, because
Yeah,
we've merged bid pools before and had to correct it.
Yeah, that's 80. I thought this was the original. Okay. The original's always in the color book. Try 84 and 127.
And then you guys can give me a due for the upcoming,
Yeah.
right? Because now I'm gonna just read this out
The,
loud again. So
for-
we've closed out 25003, 3 bidders, TR 25003, reconstruction of footways. And we are now moving on to our final bid for transportation today, which is reconstruction of alleys citywide. And this is TR 25004. And I'm looking at the team to make sure that is the one we're all on.
Yep, 25004.
And I think we have 3 bidders for this one also.
We do. They're going to sound familiar to those watching at home yelling at their TV. That's where I put the bid bonds. So first bid is from J. Villa Construction, Inc.
Okay.
You have the duplicate of the original.
I do.
I have a bid bond in my hand.
Very good. And we have 1 dupe and 1 original. And are you ready with the amount?
I am so excited to tell you the amount. I just like to pause for drama.
For dramatic tension. What page did you, oh, I got it. I have it on 84.
And the total bid is $1,517,000. 1,517,000.
0.00. And that matches the copy, which is $1,517,000.00, and that bid is for J Villa Construction. Thank you.
Okay, our next bid for TR 25004 is from Priority Construction Corporation. We have one duplicate.
Ooh. Oh, thank you, sorry.
We have one original.
And do we have a bid bond?
We have one bid bond. And the total for this.
What page are you on for the total, please?
84. Is $1,681,725.
That number is 1,681,725.00.
That's correct.
And I'm gonna verify in the copy. You said 84. Struggling to read forms today. That number is $1,681,725.00, and that bidder is Priority Construction Corporation. Thank you. And you did say we have a bond?
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot to write that down.
Okay, our next and final bidder for TR 25004 is from Santos Construction Company Incorporated. We have one original and one duplicate. I'm gonna hand you the duplicate.
Thank you.
And we have one bid bond.
Thank you.
And the total bid is 1,442,465.
That number was 1,442,465.00.
That's correct.
That bid was $1,442,465.00, and that final of three bidders was Santos Construction Company, Inc. And again, that was our final of three bids for TR 25004, reconstruction of alleys citywide. And our final opening today, are we ready with DPW? Is for the Department of Public Works, cleaning of the outfall interceptor, SC 1028. Can you verify that bid number, Case?
Yep.
SC 1028.
SC 1028, and I have one original, one duplicate.
Very good.
Approximately
Did
the
this
weight
one
of a 5-pound dumbbell.
This one does require a bond?
Yes.
Okay, I'll
And
take the
give you the
dupe and
duplicate.
search for that.
And
Wanda, did you notice it anywhere in here?
we will,
I think I'm seeing it toward the back.
we don't spoil the ending.
Oh, sorry. I think it's there.
It's just getting good. I have a bid bond. And and in case we didn't say it
I don't
before,
have the
this is
page
for
number, but I have
mobile dredging and video pipe
Very good.
incorporated.
Thanks.
So bid bond, duplicate, original.
Oh,
Let me,
I've not found the totals page yet. $188, is that what you said? 88. Thank you for the assistance from our studio audience.
I was gonna phone a friend on that one.
I mean, I was going to look at you eventually.
Okay, and the total bid amount is $12,776,620.00.
Okay. I'm going to read that one back.
I can also give you the numbers once again.
I'm still looking for the page in my copy with the total.
It's about 90A.
Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha, okay. All right. That was 12,776,620.00.
That is correct.
And that bidder was Mobile Dredging and Video Pipe, Inc. for $12,776,620.00.
That is correct.
And that was our only bidder. Congratulations. SC 1028, cleaning of the outfall interceptor. And that is our final bid today. All of these bids will be sent to the agencies for review. And I don't think we have any other announcements other than our next bid opening is going to be on March 19th, 2025. Thank you. That will be on March 19th, 2025. And again, thanks everyone for being patient because I know we were running late today, so we appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's here today supporting the bid opening and listening in. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on the 19th.
Thanks.
Thank you, TV 25.